Flames devoured the horizon as dark wings pierced the skies. A level 4 dark angel descended, its presence alone triggering chaos across the city. Civilians screamed while the ground trembled from its impact. Serena, an elite awakener, took command immediately. Recognizing the severity, she ordered Nuri to evacuate the people. Despite knowing level 4 enemies could erase entire nations, Serena chose to confront it directly. Meanwhile, panic spread through command centers, but protocols failed. The emergency system locked out, forcing a manual response. Serena, though only a level 3, charged forward alone, her only goal, stall for time until reinforcements arrived. With unwavering resolve, she struck first, engaging the monstrous figure while Nuri fled. The clash of power and will began under burning skies. As Serena prepared to strike again, a mysterious man appeared and ordered her to stand down. With a single devastating blow, he obliterated the level 4 dark angel that had overwhelmed even high-tier awakeners. Serena and Nuri stood stunned, unable to comprehend the sudden shift. The man calmly approached, his presence unnerving yet oddly familiar. He asked a simple question, what year it was. Serena answered, confused, revealing the current date. Shock flashed across the man's face. Despite experiencing hundreds of years in a hellish dimension, only 1 year had passed in the real world. He realized the time warp he endured had distorted his sense of time. His calculations were flawed, and Earth had changed while he had suffered in silence, growing stronger, exactly 1 year before. The black-haired man had encountered his enemy and was dragged into the Rego demon realm. The torment there felt eternal, but he survived and returned stronger. As Serena and Nuri watched him, they questioned his identity, unsure if he was an S-class weapon under government control. He dismissed their theories, hinting at temporal displacement. Suddenly he sensed something and vanished, while elite reinforcements arrived, led by Kim Youngwoo. Serena and Nuri were relieved but overwhelmed. Serena briefed Jungwoo, explaining that the enemy had emerged from a level 2 gate, but hesitated to elaborate further. Just then, a voice from behind interrupted, crude and forceful, demanding to pass. The chaos hadn't ended. A greater storm was clearly approaching. A reckless soldier mocked the dark-haired man, dismissing him as a cosplayer. Serena tried to stop the confrontation, but it escalated fast. With a chilling calm, the man gave the soldier 3 seconds to justify his life. His aura darkened, and the threat became real. Ignoring warnings, the soldier attacked, only to be instantly overwhelmed and slammed into the ground. As others watched in shock, the man coldly stated that the countdown had ended. His strength left no room for doubt. Serena demanded an explanation, but he redirected attention. Something far worse was happening. A gate pulsed violently behind him, energy surged, space cracked, and a new presence stirred. He turned toward it, voice low. He's coming, from the other side. The real threat had only just begun. The gate erupted violently as an enormous beast emerged. Its aura alone crushed the surroundings. The dark-haired man warned the others. This was no ordinary foe. The system confirmed it. A level 6 enemy, codename Red Horn, capable of annihilating millions in a day. Panic spread as the alert reached Central Command. Leaders issued desperate orders to evacuate civilians and mobilize every awakened fighter in Korea. Teams formed battle lines as Red Horn's towering form stood before them. Despite the overwhelming odds, they attacked, hoping to stall the beast's advance. Nuri hesitated, shouting for the dark-haired man to help, but he stood silent, unreadable, watching the chaos unfold. As the front line engaged, one question echoed from Nuri, "Aren't you going to help us?" The answer had yet to come. As chaos unfolded, Nuri begged the man to help, but he coldly asked, "Why should I?" She reminded him that this was his world too, urging him to protect it. Still unmoved, he demanded a reason to fight. On the battlefield, the enemy rampaged. One soldier declared that strength alone decided who lived or died. The man quietly observed until he asked Nuri a chilling question about Sina's orb. Serena tried pulling Nuri away, frustrated by his indifference, but Nuri resisted. Her voice trembled, but grew firmer. "That's not what powerful people do," she shouted. Serena paused, surprised. Nuri, once scared, now stood with conviction. Her words weren't just defiance, they were hope. In that moment, her belief in true strength began to shine. Inspired by her own words, Nuri leapt into battle, wielding massive blades with conviction. "Protect the powerless," she cried, charging at the monstrous Red Horn. Despite her bravery, the beast countered viciously. Just before she was struck, the black-haired man intervened, ordering her to get down. His sudden action shocked everyone. Catching Nuri midair, he set her down gently and smiled. "Interesting girl," he said, his tone shifting. Nuri introduced herself, and in return, he finally revealed his name, Taehyung. With the weight of centuries behind his eyes, he declared himself the Demon Lord. Under a blood-streaked sky, Taehyung stood tall, no longer a bystander. Whatever came next, he would face it, not as a savior, but as a ruler ready to protect what he now called his own. Nuri spotted an unfamiliar demon towering over the battlefield, confused but alert. She stayed close to Taehyung, who stood calm despite the overwhelming presence. The demon, monstrous and arrogant, mocked them both and prepared to strike. As its power surged, Taehyung stepped forward without hesitation. With a swift attack, he silenced the demon's taunt mid-sentence and launched it back with brutal force. Unfazed by the beast's display, Taehyung rose into the air, unleashing a counterattack that shattered the demon's position. He reprimanded the creature, declaring its arrogance misplaced. His blows landed clean, sending the demon crashing into the ground. Onlookers, including Serena and Jungwoo, watched in disbelief. Taehyung observed the result quietly, his expression calm, as if the entire clash was beneath his concern. Taehyung stood over the fallen demon and retrieved a glowing magic stone from its core. The crystal pulsed with energy as he declared it the item he had been searching for. Observers were shocked by its size and rarity. Without hesitation, Taehyung turned to Nuri and told her to follow him, confused. She hesitated, unsure of what he meant. He insisted, stating she had no choice. Nuri was stunned and overwhelmed, but his tone left no room for argument. Kim Jungwoo stepped in, thanking Taehyung for his help, but objecting to him taking her away. They reminded him that Nuri was still part of their unit. Despite their protests, Taehyung had made his decision clear. His intentions for Nuri were set, and he wouldn't repeat himself. Taehyung refused the team's objections, asserting dominance and striking down anyone in his way. His patience faded quickly, viewing others as insects obstructing his path. As he prepared to eliminate Jungwoo, Nuri intervened, begging him to stop. In desperation, she agreed to follow him, pleading for the lives of her comrades. Her selflessness caught Taehyung's attention. He paused, intrigued by her willingness to sacrifice for others. Just then, system data activated around Nuri, revealing a hidden truth. She possessed a dual class, extremely rare even in the demon realm. Though her stats were weak, Taehyung saw potential. Recognizing her uniqueness, he offered his hand, declaring she had been chosen. With hesitation and uncertainty, Nuri accepted. The decision marked the beginning of a path she never expected. As Nuri accepted Taehyung's hand, a crimson energy engulfed them both. Her body trembled in pain as the engraving ritual began. Taehyung assured her it was part of the contract and would strengthen her. A pillar of red light shot into the sky, shaking the city. Soldiers and civilians looked on in disbelief, unable to comprehend the sudden burst of power. Serena arrived moments later, stunned by the destruction left behind. Elsewhere, team leader Sungo met with her, surrounded by wounded allies. He reflected on the impossible. A single man had defeated multiple level 4 and 6 enemies with his bare hands. Serena listened silently, troubled not just by the enemy's defeat, but by the mysterious man who had vanished. Taking Nuri with him into the unknown, Serena sat stunned, recalling the name Taehyung. She mentioned his strange request about Xian's office, which alarmed Sungo. Realizing its importance, he demanded why she hadn't shared it earlier. Serena responded with quiet certainty. Catching him was impossible. Meanwhile, Taehyung and Nuri walked through the city. Nuri debated sending her location but hesitated. Before she could act, Taehyung revealed he already knew. Through the engraving, he could sense her thoughts. He calmly dismissed the idea of rescue, stating that anyone who came would be like insects. Nuri was shocked, realizing her thoughts were no longer private. With his final words, Taehyung made his position clear. She was already his, bound by power, and watched from within. Nuri now walked a path from which she could not retreat. Taehyung demanded Nuri lead the way, and she nervously obeyed. As they walked, memories surfaced. His mind drifted to someone precious, his grandmother. Despite centuries lost in the demon realm, her image remained clear. Nuri led him to the location, but hesitation in her voice caught his attention. They had arrived at Xian's office, or what remained of it. The building stood in ruins. Taehyung's calm expression turned sharp with rage. Shocked by the destruction, he clenched his fists and shouted, demanding to know who was responsible for destroying the place tied to his past. A covert investigation leads Serena and Sungo to track a man named Byontae Taehyung, whose name appears in both classified records and a known office building. Despite the ridiculousness of his name, mocking him as a pervert, the research reveals he's a normal university student with no awakening abilities, living a quiet life, at least on the surface. But something about his connection triggers Sungo's memory of a past guild conflict. Moments later, chaos erupts. A massive clash between awakened guilds turns violent. Taehyung arrives too late. Buildings lay in ruin, casualties grow, and the cause remains unclear. Amid the wreckage, it's evident Taehyung's identity is more than coincidence. The balance between worlds begins to crumble, and Serena realizes this conflict is only the beginning. Amid the rubble of a collapsed city, Taehyung finds his grandmother crushed beneath debris, unable to escape in time. The sight of her lifeless body breaks him, forcing memories of their life together to resurface. Her laughter, their small joys, her pride in his strength. She had dreamed of living in a proper home, and he had promised to give her one. Grief shifts into rage. Nuri, standing nearby, senses the overwhelming sorrow pulsing from him. Taehyung's heart hardens as he stares into the ruined streets. Consumed by fury, he vows retribution. The destruction wasn't random, it was cruelty. With a storm of power swelling around him, he demands to know who's responsible. His voice trembles not with fear, but vengeance. The demon lord has awakened. Taehyung, seething with grief and fury, is stopped by Sungo, who introduces himself as a national agent. Despite attempts to reason, Taehyung dismisses them coldly, warning them not to interfere, learning that the Awakeners are behind the destruction, yet unnamed. He wastes no time. His goal is clear. Without hesitation, he announces his intent to face the Awakeners directly. Shocked, the agents scramble. Serena and the White Tiger team are ordered to intervene, but they hesitate, recognizing his overwhelming power. Some doubt, others anticipate a challenge, but none truly understand what they're facing. To them, he's just one rogue. To Taehyung, they're obstacles between him and vengeance. This isn't war, it's retribution. And the Awakeners are about to face the wrath of the SSS-class Demon Lord. The White Tiger team launched a coordinated assault, confident that an awakened like Taehyung could endure. Their attacks were precise, explosive, but he stood unfazed, countering with blinding speed and brutal strength. He overwhelmed each attacker with minimal effort. One by one, elite agents fell, shocked, defeated, and outmatched. Panic spread. Serena and Sungo realized too late they couldn't contain him. Serena admitted what the others feared. This wasn't just a man. His raw power, rage, and darkness eclipsed any known classification. The battlefield shifted. He wasn't resisting, he was purging. As shadows swirled and crimson eyes glowed, fear gripped even the strongest. This wasn't vengeance anymore. It was domination, and no one, no team, no guild, could stand against the return of the SSS-class Demon Lord. Nuri reaches out, trying to calm Taehyung as his power surges uncontrollably. Though bound to him by a soul imprint, she defies him. Driven by her own heart, her unexpected resistance stuns him. She speaks not with power, but with clarity, reminding him that not all in the Awakeners are evil. Some fight for peace, protect the weak, and grieve the innocent losses too. Her words strike deeper than any blow. Memories of his grandmother's love surface, her gentle guidance echoing in his mind. She never asked for power or revenge, only that he becomes someone who helps others, bathed in golden light. Taehyung reflects in silence. For the first time since his return, rage gives way to sorrow. His purpose wavers, not out of weakness, but the return of the humanity he thought he'd lost. Moved by Nuri's courage, Taehyung gently thanks her, finally understanding the reason for his return. Not for destruction or revenge, but to protect, as his grandmother once wished. He promises to live by her words, to help others, and protect the world from ruin. Nuri, moved and relieved, pledges to follow him wholeheartedly. But his path remains sharp. Though his heart has shifted, his demand is clear. He will aid the Awakeners for now, but only if they find who killed his grandmother. He grants them 3 days. Serena and Sungo are left stunned, questioning his control over Nuri and the storm of power he commands. Taehyung walks a new road, torn between wrath and redemption, but his vengeance still burns quietly behind his calm gaze. At the Seoul Regional Headquarters, chaos erupts as agents rush to confront team leader Kang for disappearing mid-mission. Their frustration turns into disbelief when they see Taehyung among them. Questions flood in. Who is he? How did they defeat a level 6 enemy? And why wasn't he registered? Leader Kang dodges specifics, vaguely crediting Taehyung as a recently discovered Awakener. The agents are stunned that someone unregistered could subdue such a threat. Officials decide to test him immediately for classification. The suggestion sparks tension. Taehyung, calm but amused, questions their logic, testing someone who already surpassed their strongest. His smile hints at superiority, not arrogance. To him, this is a trivial formality. But for the agency, it's the first step in recognizing the power they've unintentionally unleashed. The registration center is packed with people awaiting their awakening tests. Serena escorts Taehyung through the crowd, aware of the tension his presence brings. Though most are aspiring Awakeners, his authority demands urgency. Frustrated by delays, Taehyung questions, the wait prompting Serena to rush to reception. Despite their status, the clerk explains all must wait in line, no exceptions. Serena panics, realizing the risk of provoking him. As minutes pass, Taehyung's mood shifts. His red eyes glow with growing irritation. Darkness begins to rise around him, reacting to the perceived disrespect. Nuri tries to calm him as he radiates threatening energy. The crowd grows uneasy. A bystander casually tells him to queue, unaware of the danger. The room stands on the edge of chaos, held together by sheer restraint. Taehyung's aura erupts, terrifying the crowd. With a simple glare, he forces them aside, declaring the process beneath him. Nuri begs him to restrain himself as panic spreads. Ignoring protocol, he demands to be graded immediately. His words, laced with power, leave staff shaken. Though he didn't harm anyone, dozens are left unconscious from the pressure alone. Inside, agents scramble to make sense of the disturbance. Nuri notes his unusual mercy. Others struggle to comprehend his overwhelming presence. Serena observes in silence. Officials are left speechless, recognizing the authority Taehyung holds without a title. With the system unprepared for a being of his magnitude, the realization spreads. The current ranking structure is obsolete. A new category must be created. Taehyung is beyond comparison, and Korea's highest class is about to be rewritten. Inside the testing chamber, Taehyung is instructed to attack a magical sphere, using his strongest spell. He scoffs, knowing full well that unleashing his full power would destroy the entire facility. Opting to hold back, he tries a basic incantation, but nothing happens. Confused, he repeats the spell, yet still no effect. The staff misread his hesitation as nervousness. Frustrated, Taehyung drops the spellcasting entirely and uses brute force instead. In a flash, he punches the sphere directly. The result is immediate and overwhelming. The room shakes, energy surges violently, and fragments scatter as the sphere shatters under the impact. Observers are stunned. Taehyung's restrained strength still broke the limit of the measuring device. This wasn't just a test, it was a warning. He is far beyond anything the system was built to handle. Taehyung activates his magic, and in a flash, the entire measuring sphere disintegrates. Staff are stunned, it vanished without a trace. Even top-ranked awakeners had only cracked it before. The operator nervously suggests more tests, but Taehyung rejects the idea. He declares their tools unfit to measure his strength and demands immediate results. His energy overwhelms the room. Everyone realizes no machine can define him. When his classification finally appears, class approved, the room falls silent. Leader Kang tries to act casual, asking for feedback. Taehyung answers flatly, the whole test was boring. Despite breaking every limit, he remains unimpressed. The system may have ranked him, but it was clear. Taehyung isn't just a top-tier awakener. He's a being who exists outside their entire scale. After the intense ranking exam, Taehyung and Nuri share a quiet moment at a cafe. While she enjoys her drink and cake, he struggles with the bitterness of green tea. Still adjusting to normalcy, he accepts Nuri's offered drink with mild surprise. For a moment, his expression softens. Their conversation shifts to Taehyung's true power. Nuri wonders if he is a body enhancement type, but he explains he hasn't used real magic since arriving, only physical strength. Due to the world's restrictions, his magical abilities remain sealed, a side effect of returning from the demonic realm. Even the test couldn't gauge his true class. As they chat, Nuri gets excited over the idea of her master being a full-fledged mage, but Taehyung reminds her bluntly, summoning his full power would destroy the KFA instantly. Leader Kang arrives to announce Taehyung's official classification, S-Class, the highest ever recorded in the country. Nuri celebrates, but Taehyung remains indifferent, noting they didn't come just to flatter him. Pressured, Kang nervously prepares to explain the real reason behind the urgent visit.
Taehyung, barely interested, listened patiently before responding with a single word, no. Serena gasped in shock. She couldn't believe he was turning down such a golden opportunity. If he announced his rank, he would gain unparalleled influence. But Taehyung was uninterested in fame or wealth. He found the idea annoying. If he needed money, he would simply earn it himself. He had already agreed to assist them, and that alone should be enough. His cooperation was contingent on one thing: his condition. As long as they fulfilled his demand, he would keep his end of the deal. Suho, watching from the sidelines, clenched his fists. They needed to act fast. The 3-day deadline was almost up. If they didn't identify the true culprit behind Xian's office destruction, then Taehyung would take matters into his own hands, and that would mean absolute carnage. 3 days later, Taehyung and Nuri arrived at a massive mansion, one of the many properties provided for his temporary stay. Nuri, eyes sparkling with amazement, marveled at the sheer size of the estate. She admitted that she had never seen such a grand house before. Taehyung, however, barely reacted. To him, this was nothing compared to his true castle. But still, for now, it would do. As the deadline loomed, Suho arrived at the mansion's gates, only to hear strange noises from inside. Frowning, he moved closer and wondered what was going on. Inside, Taehyung and Nori were in the middle of a training session. Taehyung, watching her closely, ordered Nori to attack with everything she had. She dashed toward him at high speed, her movements sharp and precise, but her strikes were still too weak. Taehyung effortlessly parried each attack, barely moving as he countered her blows with minimal effort. Nori, refusing to back down, launched herself into the air and attempted an overhead strike. However, Taehyung casually caught her weapon with his fingers and, with a gentle flick of his wrist, sent her flying across the training ground. She crashed to the floor but quickly scrambled back up. Taehyung, sensing her frustration, called for a break. She wasn't ready yet, but she was improving. Handing her a towel, he acknowledged that if she continued training at this pace, she might one day reach the level required to serve as one of his subordinates. To be in his ranks, one had to be at least S-class. Nori, still catching her breath, hesitated before asking a crucial question. Today was the last day of the deadline. Was he truly going to kill everyone in the Awakened Alliance? Taehyung, his expression turning dark, looked at her with a wild and unreadable gaze. The deadline ends, no mercy left. Taehyung regarded Nori with cold determination. The deadline he had given them was up. There was no longer any reason to expect mercy. His voice was unwavering as he declared that they had been given enough time. He would no longer wait. Nori, bowing her head, tried once more to reason with him. Their lives mattered too. She wasn't just pleading for the guilty, but for the innocent people who might get caught in the crossfire. The demon lord was momentarily taken aback. He had not heard those words in centuries. The demon realm was a land where life was worth nothing, where the weak perished without a second thought. There, survival was everything, and only those with absolute power could claim to rule. To Nori, a life was something to be protected, but to Taehyung, it was a tool, one to be used or discarded depending on its worth. Placing a firm hand on her shoulder, his tone was softer than before, but no less certain. This wasn't just mindless slaughter. This was vengeance. This was justice. This was a necessary measure to prevent another tragedy from happening. When one innocent soul perishes, another survives. It was an unavoidable truth. Nori, swallowing her fear, nodded. She understood. But understanding did not mean accepting. Taehyung, watching her closely, recognized something strange within himself. Had he become so lenient? He had never before found the need to explain himself to anyone. He was changing, saying unnecessary things, and all because of this girl. His thoughts were interrupted as Sonho approached, calling out to him while clutching a folder of documents. Without turning around, Taehyung remarked that Sonho could have called. Hadn't he been taught how to use a phone? Sonho, somewhat sheepishly, admitted that he had wanted to meet in person. But more than that, his eyes lingered on Nori, noting how much she had changed in just a few days. It was as if she had become a different person altogether. Could it be because of Tun? He didn't dwell on it and instead quickly shifted back to business, knowing that wasting the Demon Lord's time was dangerous. Apologizing for the delay, Sonho explained that, as promised, they had found the perpetrators. He handed the folder to Taehyung, revealing the ringleaders of the attack on Xian's office. They were members of the Ome Guild. Originally a notorious criminal gang, the Wee gang had transformed into an awakened guild after their leader Gil became an awakened one himself. Despite carrying the title of an awakened guild, their true nature never changed. They were nothing more than a group of ruthless criminals. They tortured innocent civilians, terrorized communities, and used their connections to avoid consequences. Even national intelligence had been forced to tolerate their existence due to their ties with the Awakened Association. Taehyung, flipping through the documents, smirked. People like this existed everywhere. Sonho, aware of what was about to happen, handed him the folder directly, stating that now, Taehyung could get rid of them without dirtying his own hands. Suho, listening in, suddenly realized something. They had never even considered this possibility. If the Guild was as despicable as Taehyung claimed, then eliminating them would be a public service. But before they could react, Taehyung's decision had already been made. His voice was cold. Merciless, they would wait no longer. Vengeance was near. The wrath of the Demon Lord Guild's end inside his office. Gil, the leader of the Guild, was relaxing. With a smug grin, he happily declared that they had taken full control of the plaza. Soon, they would eliminate all unprofitable businesses and introduce new franchises. This was how real power worked. Business was nothing more than a battlefield, and he was its conqueror. He laughed, boasting that, thanks to the National Intelligence Service, who tirelessly worked to protect the country, even ordinary people like them could become rich. He never once considered that his own sins would soon come back to haunt him. Without warning, explosions erupted outside. Magic orbs crashed into the building, shaking its very foundation. The air filled with the sound of crumbling stone and fire, and the screams of his subordinates filled the halls. Gil bolted from his chair, his arrogance shattered in an instant. His guild members ran to his office, shouting in panic, asking if he was safe. They rushed outside to assess the situation, but what they saw froze them in terror. Standing above them, perched on the rooftop, was a lone figure. The demon lord had come. With a voice that shook the night, Taehyung declared that they would atone for their sins. His golden eyes gleamed with pure fury, his silhouette surrounded by black flames. One of the guild members, trembling, muttered in disbelief. Someone was standing in the fire. He wasn't just unharmed, he was part of it. Without hesitation, Taehyung called out to the guild, demanding that they repent. If they admitted their sins and bowed their heads, he would grant them a painless death. Gil, however, was not a man who would bow. Clenching his fists in rage, he shouted that it was all because of this bastard. This one man had come to ruin everything. He ordered his men to attack. One of the fighters, eager to prove himself, charged forward, seeing this as an opportunity to rise in rank. He never got the chance. Before he could react, Taehyung landed directly on him, triggering a massive explosion. The fighter's body was incinerated in an instant. The rest of the guild members stared in horror as Taehyung's expression darkened. This was their last chance. They had been given mercy, and they had thrown it away. One of the fighters, gripped by terror, turned on his heels and attempted to flee. Taehyung, watching in amusement, casually lifted a massive metal beam from the rubble. With unnerving ease, he hurled it across the battlefield. The fleeing fighter barely had time to scream before the beam struck him, crushing his body in an instant. Taehyung sneered. Who had told them they could escape? The battlefield descended into chaos. The guild members were now scrambling, desperate to save themselves, but none of them would leave alive. Amidst the carnage, Gil, realizing that all was lost, made the coward's choice. He ran. He pushed past his own men, abandoning them, screaming for his fighters to hold Taehyung back while he made his escape. Taehyung, watching this with cold amusement, smirked. The guild leader, the so-called boss, had deserted his own subordinates. This world was no different than the demon realm. Power ruled all, and weaklings perished. Meanwhile, in a hidden room, Gil sat trembling, clutching a bag full of magic stones, muttering in panic. Had they made a mistake? Maybe it was because of what they had done to Xian's office. Maybe it was because they had angered the wrong man. But it was too late for regret. Because the demon lord had already arrived, the end of the Ohm Guild. No mercy left. Gil, still shaken, had hoped his subordinates would be able to clean up the mess, but deep down, he knew it was a desperate hope. When one of the remaining fighters approached him, voice trembling, he asked how many people were still available. Gil, his face filled with frustration and panic, ordered all the awakened members to gather. If they could lure the intruder into a tight space, they might have a chance to overwhelm him. Even if he was stronger than a rank hunter. Within minutes, a large group of warriors entered the room, their weapons drawn, their eyes burning with forced determination. They were ready to fight, but before Gil could give the order, Taehyung appeared before them. It happened so fast that no one even saw him move. The moment they laid eyes on him, every fighter charged at once, determined to strike him down. But Taehyung, smiling with dark amusement, only muttered that this was perfect. The more opponents, the better. It only meant he wouldn't have to waste time hunting them down one by one. The battle was over before it had even begun. Taehyung tore through them like a storm, his movements too fast to follow, his strikes too devastating to block. Each enemy fell in seconds, their attacks proving utterly useless. Within moments, the once crowded room was filled with fallen bodies, and not a single one of them remained standing. Standing amidst the destruction, Taehyung turned his gaze to a large metal door at the back of the room. His golden eyes narrowed. He knew exactly where the rat was hiding. With one swift motion, he obliterated the door, blowing it apart with a force that sent debris flying in all directions. He stepped into the room with a slow, deliberate pace, his expression merciless. He muttered under his breath, almost mockingly, "Rats always hide, don't they?" Inside, a lone fighter had collapsed on the floor, his face twisted in terror. He had witnessed the impossible. This man had slaughtered an entire group of awakened fighters single-handedly. He was a monster. In a desperate attempt to escape, He crawled toward the metal door, pounding on it with trembling fists, screaming that it wouldn't open. Tae-hyung stepped forward, seized the man by the head, and lifted him effortlessly into the air. His voice was filled with cold fury as he reminded the man that he had sacrificed innocent lives without hesitation. Yet now he begged for his own. With one swift motion, Tae-hyung slammed the man against the wall, crushing his skull instantly. The body slid to the ground, lifeless. From across the room, Gil watched in horror. He had never felt fear like this before. He stammered, asking why this was happening to them. Why was Tae-hyung doing this? The demon lord turned his cold gaze on him and stated his purpose clearly. He wanted to wipe the Ohm Guild off the face of the earth. But, out of curiosity, he asked Gil to give him just one reason why he should be spared. Gil, his mind racing, realized with dread that Tae-hyung hadn't come here for some random reason. This was personal. In a last-ditch attempt to save himself, Gil forced a smile and claimed they had no choice. It had all been self-defense. Tae-hyung's expression darkened. Self-defense? They were the ones who attacked first. The Ohm Guild had never given their enemies a chance to fight back. Did Gil really think he wouldn't know the truth? But Gil wasn't done yet. His hand twitched behind his back, gripping a hidden blade. He knew he was outmatched, but maybe, just maybe, he could land a single hit. If he did, he could create an opening and escape. Feigning submission, Gil suddenly dashed forward, attempting to stab Tae-hyung directly in the face. He screamed that he wasn't just going to sit and accept his fate, he would fight for his life. The blade struck Tae-hyung's cheek. Nothing happened. The weapon didn't pierce his skin, not even a scratch. Tae-hyung grinned, an unhinged gleam in his eyes. He tilted his head slightly and told Gil that he'd give him 1 minute. That was his last chance. Let him try again. Gil, now frantic, launched attack after attack, putting everything he had into striking him down. His hidden blade became a blur, stabbing dozens of times, aiming for weak points: the throat, the heart, the eyes. None of it mattered. Not a single attack landed. Tae-hyung didn't even flinch. As Gil's panic grew, Tae-hyung's mind drifted elsewhere. He hadn't returned to this world for power. He hadn't come back to play games with fools like this. There was only one reason he was here: his grandmother. And for her, he would show no mercy. Gil screamed that this was going to hurt. Tae-hyung moved so fast that Gil didn't even see it happen. A blade pierced straight through his chest, so fast, so precise, that he could still feel his heart beating for a brief moment before it stopped. With his last strength, Gil tried to crawl away, tears streaming down his face. He begged for mercy, promising to give everything he had. Tae-hyung's eyes burned with hatred. Mercy? Slowly he approached, towering over the dying man, and then he finished him off. Aftermath, the unstoppable S-Class. The police arrived at the scene of destruction, taking in the horrifying aftermath. The Ohm Guild had been completely wiped out. 52 people, all dead. The once feared criminal syndicate was now nothing more than a blood-stained ruin. A high-ranking official, standing amidst the wreckage, looked at the massacre with an uneasy expression. His voice was tense as he stated the obvious: they were in deep trouble. One of his subordinates asked a chilling question. Were they just going to pretend this didn't happen? This wasn't a simple case of murder. This was a massacre. A single man had killed an entire guild. 52 people. Gone. One of the officials laughed nervously. How were they even supposed to punish an S-Class awakened with an atomic bomb? They were a country of law and order. They couldn't allow vigilante justice to go unchecked. But the real concern wasn't the massacre itself. The discussion quickly turned to something even more pressing. In recent weeks, the number of dimensional gates had increased 12-fold. In just 1 week, there had been 4 new gates in Seoul alone. Worse, the monsters that emerged weren't ordinary ones. They were 4th and 6th level threats, more bloodthirsty and savage than ever before. Their awakened forces weren't strong enough to handle them. They were lucky to have at least one S-Class, but that didn't mean he was unstoppable. They would let him continue for now, but he needed to understand something. They were watching him, and if Tae-hyung thought he could do whatever he wanted, he was wrong. For the fate of their country was now in the hands of a man who answered to no one. An awkward encounter and a silent struggle after the massacre of the Ohm Guild. Tae-hyung had fallen into an unusual silence, keeping to himself for days. Nori, observing his uncharacteristic quietness, couldn't help but wonder if he was struggling with the weight of his actions. She remembered the head of the intelligence agency kneeling before her, begging her to calm him down. But how was she supposed to console a man like him? As she folded his freshly laundered clothes, she noticed something peculiar. His closet was filled with identical shirts. They were all the same color, the same style. The The agency had clearly provided him with basic necessities, but they had done so without any taste or creativity. Suddenly, an idea sparked in her mind. With a cheerful expression, she suggested that they go shopping. They both needed new clothes, and maybe a change of scenery would help lift his mood. Taehyung, unexpectedly, agreed without protest, though he added one condition which made Nori momentarily panic. Was he really already sick of shopping before even going? She quickly realized the truth when Taehyung bluntly stated that he had no money. Nori, exhaling in relief, offered to lend him some, but instead of accepting, Taehyung raised his hand, conjured a portal, and summoned a massive gemstone, a magic stone of immense value. With a casual smirk, he declared that a lord does not need to borrow money. Selling this would be more than enough. The exchange and the unexpected revelation. They arrived at the exchange center, a facility run by the National Intelligence Agency, where hunters and awakened ones exchanged the valuable materials they had collected from monsters for money. Taehyung explained that this wasn't just a private establishment, it was also used by the Awakened Association, making it a critical part of Korea's economic system for dealing with awakened-related resources. Upon entering, they were greeted by a staff member who politely asked what kind of gemstone they wanted to sell and requested to see the item for appraisal. Taehyung calmly handed over the massive magic stone, which made the employee's eyes widen in shock. She immediately radioed her superior, informing him that someone had brought in an unusually large gemstone. Sonho, irritated at being interrupted over what he assumed was a low-grade magic stone, initially dismissed the concern until he was told just how massive it was. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, he ordered the staff to bring them directly to his office. Once inside, Sonho, dressed in an expensive suit and clearly enjoying his role in the financial sector, greeted Nori first, recognizing her as an intelligence officer. However, when he turned his gaze to Taehyung, his tone immediately turned condescending. He mocked him, assuming he was some vagrant who had wandered into the exchange. They couldn't let just anyone walk in off the streets after all. It would tarnish their reputation. Taehyung, unfazed by the insult, casually placed the gemstone on the table. The billion-dollar transaction or not, the moment Sonho laid eyes on the gemstone, his entire demeanor shifted. His jaw dropped, and his breath hitched. This wasn't just a magic stone, it was a nugget of pure energy, something he had never seen before in his life. He muttered in disbelief, questioning whether this was even real. Taehyung, maintaining his usual calm, simply asked how much they would pay for it. Sonho, still in shock, apologized profusely they couldn't pay for something this valuable immediately. This kind of transaction would require approval from the central bank, and even then, it would take time. Taehyung, displeased, didn't argue. Instead, he broke the gemstone into smaller pieces with his bare hands, causing even more shock to Sonho. Even smaller fragments of the gemstone were still worth billions, something only a handful of awakened individuals had ever sold. Sonho, struggling to process the situation, admitted that they could buy a small portion of the stone, but only after negotiating with the Ministry of Finance. However, that would take even more time. Taehyung, his patience waning, frowned. This was the largest exchange facility in Korea, and they couldn't even buy one gemstone? Nori, frustrated by the delay, shouted that they needed the money now. Couldn't they at least pay part of it up front? Sonho, sweating nervously, shook his head. That's not how it worked. But one thing was certain, Taehyung had just shaken the financial world in a way they had never seen before. The power of money and an unexpected challenge. Despite Sonho's reluctance, Nori knew how to pressure him into a deal. She reminded him that the planning bureau permitted nuggets to be purchased for less than their appraised value under certain conditions. If he played his cards right, he could earn a massive profit from this exchange. Would he really pass up the opportunity to make $1 billion right now? Sonho, visibly displeased, hated being cornered like this. It wasn't just about money. This deal could cause problems for the bureau. However, as he met Taehyung's unyielding gaze, he realized he had no choice. Reluctantly, he agreed to the deal. Nori and Taehyung left the exchange, walking down the street as she checked her phone. Seeing the 1 billion credit confirmation, she grinned. The money had arrived. Now they could finally go shopping. She declared that their first stop would be finding clothes for him, to which Taehyung, in his usual detached manner, casually remarked that she had been quite good at persuading that clerk. Meanwhile, back in his office, Sonho sat fuming. How dare they manipulate him like that? He would not let this go. With a scowl, he picked up his phone, called an unknown contact, and muttered coldly that he needed someone to deal with a couple of scumbags. A transformation in more ways than one inside the luxurious clothing store. Nori was beaming with excitement. She dragged Taehyung forward, pointing toward a section of high-end suits with an almost childlike enthusiasm. Tae-hyung, remaining as indifferent as ever, told her to buy whatever she wanted since he didn't need anything. But Nori wasn't having it. They were here for him, and she wasn't about to let him leave without dressing properly. She grabbed his hand, pulled him toward the racks, and cheerfully insisted that he should let her help him dress elegantly. Tae-hyung, amused by her energy, found himself thinking that the more he got to know her, the more interesting she became. She was not like the others, and that made him curious. They approached the counter, where an employee greeted them with a professional smile. Nori, wide-eyed with admiration, pointed at a suit and demanded they bring it to him. After some time, Tae-hyung stepped out, dressed in a finely tailored suit. Nori, filled with pure joy, ordered the employees to make sure he was dressed perfectly from head to toe. When the final adjustments were done, the staff admired their work. The suit fit him flawlessly, enhancing his commanding presence. Tae-hyung, inspecting his reflection, admitted he was not used to wearing such clothes. "What did she think?" he asked, his tone neutral. Nori's reaction was immediate and dramatic. She exclaimed in pure awe, loudly declaring that he looked incredible, practically magnificent. She was proud to tell everyone that he was her master. Tae-hyung, unfazed by her enthusiasm, merely adjusted his collar and declared that they should leave. Nori, still caught up in excitement, asked if he didn't want to admire himself in the mirror a little longer. Tae-hyung, with a rare smirk, replied that her words were enough. If she said he looked good, that was all he needed to know. Nori, grinning to herself, thought proudly that she was getting through to him. The arrival of a worthy foe. After finishing their shopping spree, Nori and Tae-hyung stepped out of the store, satisfied with their purchases. However, their peaceful outing was suddenly interrupted. The sky above them shifted, swirling with violent magical energy. Tae-hyung's eyes narrowed as he immediately recognized the phenomenon. A dimensional gate had opened. But this one was different. He had never seen a gate like this before. A massive red hand pushed through the portal, its fingers stretching out like claws, forcing the tear in space to widen even further. Nori, stunned and horrified, gasped in realization these were unknown gates. Normally, gates manifested gradually, giving people time to prepare. But these had appeared suddenly, without any warning signs. That meant catastrophic consequences. Tae-hyung's expression darkened. Judging from the sheer power emanating from the portal, whatever was about to emerge would be stronger than anything they had encountered before. Before anyone could react, a second massive clawed limb emerged from the gate, tearing through the sky. Tae-hyung, unfazed, called out toward the monster within, telling it to show itself. The air trembled, and with a deafening roar, a colossal red dragon burst forth, its scales glistening like molten fire, its crimson wings spreading wide. The earth shook beneath its massive presence, and its golden eyes, filled with pure rage, scanned the world it had just entered. The director of the intelligence agency, who had just been informed of the incident, urgently demanded a status report. Nori, speaking into her radio, relayed the situation, her voice shaking. They were at the mall when the gates opened, and a huge monster had come through. Fortunately, Tae-hyung was with them, and they had begun evacuating civilians. The director, clearly alarmed, promised to send backup immediately, but Tae-hyung wasn't waiting. Watching the massive beast, a slow, savage smile spread across his face. It had been too long. Dragons. Cruel, domineering, insane creatures. Born as demigods, they considered themselves rulers of all things. He had fought such a creature before in the demonic realm, and it had been one of his greatest victories. That dragon had refused to submit, so he had ripped out its throat. Now, another dragon stood before him finally. Finally, a worthy opponent. The weight of a new legend. The mechanical voice of the system announcement echoed through the devastated streets once more, its sterile tone a stark contrast to the sheer chaos that had unfolded moments ago. A heavy silence followed, and then, like a wave, the people collectively exhaled, their tense shoulders relaxing, their stiff movements softening as relief washed over them. The fear that had gripped them just moments before began to loosen its hold. The monster, the unstoppable force that had threatened to raze everything to the ground, was gone. But where? Joan Woo, an awakened B-class hunter from the Awakened Alliance, turned sharply toward Nori, his expression somewhere between disbelief and irritation. His voice was sharp, demanding, "Where is your master? And that monster, where did they go?" His words were laced with frustration, but Nori couldn't answer right away. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. How could she even begin to explain what she had just witnessed? Instead, she simply lifted her gaze toward the sky, her expression unreadable. And then, with a small, breathless smile, she murmured, "They're up there." Joan blinked, his brows drawing together as if he hadn't quite heard her correctly. Up there? His head tilted as he followed her gaze, his stomach twisting with unease. You mean they're still fighting? In the sky? He knew high-rank Awakens had immense mobility, but to battle at an altitude that high it was unheard of. Another Awakened, standing beside him, scoffed. What kind of ridiculous nonsense is that? What do you expect us to believe? That a gigantic city-raising monster just flew off into space? His eyes narrowed at Nori, hostility flickering behind them. You're asking us to believe that without proof? Have you lost your mind? Nori turned to him, her hands clenching slightly at her sides. She wasn't usually one to engage in arguments, but this time she stood firm. I'm telling the truth, she said, voice steady. But it didn't matter. The man wasn't listening. Enough of this crap, he snapped, jabbing a finger toward another individual standing nearby. He's with the National Intelligence Agency, isn't he? Tell me then, where's the monster? Where's the body? Because if you're expecting us to believe that a battle like that ended without a trace, you've got another thing coming. His voice grew louder, angrier. The Awakened Alliance isn't here to clean up your mess. Or did you think we had nothing better to do? A tense silence settled over the group. Then, with controlled anger, a man in a formal suit stepped forward. That's enough, he said. His voice was calm yet edged with warning. I don't care what position you hold in the Awakened Alliance, you don't get to come here and treat us like this. If you keep pushing, we'll be filing a complaint against you. The hunter Joan Ming laughed bitterly, his fingers still pointed at his target. A complaint? Against me? He sneered. You couldn't even handle your own damn job, and now you're gonna cry to your superiors? He took a step closer, his presence brimming with hostility. Let's get something straight. You think all Awakened are on the same level? You think we follow your orders just because your agency is state-controlled? His voice dropped into something dangerous. Our alliance doesn't answer to your government. The tension was thick enough to suffocate them. But then a new terror appeared. A fireball exploded across the sky. Burning objects rained down from above, trailing smoke and flames like the remnants of a fallen god. The ground beneath them trembled violently, as if the very air had become too heavy for the earth to hold. Gasps and screams filled the streets as one of the bystanders shouted, voice hoarse with a panic. It's falling toward us! Run! The world shattered. A deafening explosion erupted just above the city, fire blooming like a second sun. The sheer force of the blast sent people flying backward, their bodies tumbling like rag dolls as shockwaves rippled outward, flattening trees, shattering glass, and sending debris crashing through the streets. Flames surged toward them, threatening to swallow the very ground they stood on, and then, amidst the inferno, he appeared. Standing unscathed in the center of the raging fire, Taehyung emerged. His silhouette cut through the flames like a specter of destruction, his golden eyes glowing beneath the smoke-filled sky. He stood tall, unaffected, like he had merely taken a casual stroll through the depths of hell. Beside him, the severed head of the dragon lay in ruins, its colossal form reduced to nothing more than a trophy at his feet. For a long moment no one spoke. Serena and Sunho, who had arrived at the scene moments earlier, could do nothing but stare at him in utter disbelief. And Nori, her lips curled into a small, uncontainable smile. Master, she whispered, breathless. Taehyung raised a hand to his head, rubbing his temple as if he had a mild headache. I should have descended more slowly, he muttered to himself. The silence broke like shattered glass. The awakened hunters, the intelligence agents, the civilians, they all turned toward him at once. A sea of shock, fear, admiration, and utter disbelief. The once arrogant Joan Ming stared at him, his mouth slightly open, his fingers twitching at his sides. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. A man had just fallen from the sky with a dragon's head. Someone, a high-ranking agent, stepped forward and muttered under his breath, Who the hell is this guy? Suho, still recovering from the spectacle, took a deep breath and then straightened. He stepped forward and bowed deeply, his tone shifting into something much more respectful. Ting, sir, he said carefully, his voice steady despite the lingering tension in the air. You handled this situation expertly. He hesitated, then added, But we need to talk. Immediately. Taehyung's eyes flickered toward him. He was about to dismiss the request outright, but then he caught the nervous edge in Suho's tone. He wasn't just making small talk, something was wrong. Narrowing his gaze, Taehyung folded his arms. What's this about? Suho swallowed, then nodded to the burning remains of the dragon's head. His voice was urgent, laced with an unspoken warning. Because of this, he said, the whole world now knows exactly how powerful you are. Taehyung raised a brow, his expression unreadable. Suho exhaled sharply. And that means things are about to get much, much more complicated. Taehyung abruptly stated that his interlocutor was too talkative more than just rudeness. He despised wasting time. He insisted they get straight to the point, concluding that they had no choice but to officially announce his existence. Nori, visibly worried, attempted to speak, while the people behind the barrier engaged in discussions about the latest events. One of them, in shock, questioned whether this was the monster from that gate. Had they ever encountered a creature of this size before? Another asked, astonished, if this individual had truly defeated such a monstrous being single-handedly. Taehyung, however, expressed indifference to all of it. Sonho, observing his reaction, felt uneasy. He hadn't expected him to agree. What could he possibly agree on with that kind of monster? It seemed entirely impossible. There were no options. Then, suddenly, Taehyung stated that it wouldn't be difficult for him to agree with him. Taehyung, surprised, questioned whether he had misunderstood. But Taehyung was firm. Taehyung responded, saying they should do what needed to be done. Nervously, he was asked again if he was sure about this decision. Folding his arms, he declared that he shouldn't have to repeat himself. He pointed directly at his interlocutor, emphasizing that he didn't want any unnecessary trouble. Without hesitation, Taehyung activated his abilities, summoning a towering pillar of light. He hoped the reward he offered would be acceptable. The onlookers stared in awe at the massive magic stone that had appeared. Moments later, one of the employees suddenly shouted and turned toward Anderson, who was intently examining some documents. The employee asked whether Anderson had any business with him. Anderson, standing up, was informed that the operation had been cancelled. He demanded an explanation for this abrupt decision. The employee explained, with visible unease, that new information had surfaced according to the latest reports. The high-level monster that had emerged in Korea had already been eliminated. Still looking at his tablet, he elaborated that the being responsible for this feat was an individual who had just been confirmed as Korea's newest S-Class Awakened. Meanwhile, Taehyung, dressed in a tattered suit, remarked that he had only recently bought it, and it was already ruined. Murray, in a cheerful tone, reassured him that they could always buy another one. A bystander looked at Taehyung with curiosity. Who exactly was this person? He had descended from the sky, clutching the head of an enormous monster, and had extracted a crystal from it. Never before had he witnessed a crystal of such size. Nori, now smiling, suggested that next time they should buy him some casual clothes instead. Taehyung, puzzled, asked what casual meant. People, when confronted with something utterly beyond their comprehension, usually reacted in one of two ways. Either they accepted what they saw or denied it outright. One individual, initially in shock, suddenly grinned and claimed to have figured it out. Laughing, he said they were simply playing a prank. Pointing at them with his index finger, he confidently asserted that it was all just an elaborate performance. After all, things like this didn't happen in real life. He nearly believed it himself. Was this some kind of 3D projection? Was this just how advanced technology had become? Sonho, clearly concerned, urged him to calm down and listen. But the man refused. Why should he listen? He argued that it was all a fabrication. Another person attempted to reason with him, explaining that, difficult as it might be to accept, outright denial was even more pointless. The National Intelligence Agency would soon make an official announcement regarding the emergence of a new S-Class Awakened in their country. And that very individual was standing right before them now. Wang, in disbelief, asked whether this was truly real. Raising his voice, he scoffed at the idea. Did they take him for a fool? He sneered, sarcastically adding that he was just as much of an S-Class Awakened as his grandmother. Furious, he declared that he had seen through their scheme. This was all a setup orchestrated by the National Intelligence Agency from start to finish. Their goal? To intimidate the Awakened Alliance by fabricating the existence of a fake S-Class individual. Sonho, frustrated, asked how he could possibly speak of deception when the events had unfolded right in front of everyone. Wang, still skeptical, argued that none of it made sense. A level 7 monster had suddenly appeared in the middle of Seoul, then mysteriously vanished into the sky only for its head to fall back down. Could anyone truly believe such an absurd scenario? People weren't complete fools. Nori, unable to contain her anger, shouted at him to stop. Her master was no fraud. He was a genuine S-Class Awakened. If not for him, she insisted, not only would everyone here be dead, but all of Seoul would have been wiped off the face of the earth. Yet instead of gratitude, Wang had the audacity to call him a fake? Pointing at her with his index finger, Wang sneered. How dare she, a lower-ranking Awakened, interrupt the conversations of the strong? She stared at him, dumbfounded. He scoffed and asked if this was how they trained people in the National Intelligence Agency. Did they even have a proper chain of command? What else could be expected from a department full of scammers and slackers? Standing beside Nori, Tying remarked that the man was making too much noise. However, to him, it was just empty sound, meaningless and not worth his attention. He intended to ignore someone so insignificant. Nori glanced at Taehyung in confusion, but before she could say anything, his expression darkened with anger. Cloaking his body in dark energy, he declared that he couldn't simply overlook the disrespect toward his subordinate. The human stood frozen, nearly speechless. But Taehyung wasn't finished. He made it clear he was not a generous person. This was his only warning. The man had better never insult him or his subordinates again. Wai, trembling with horror, stared at Taehyung, who continued to glare at him threateningly. If his warning was ignored, the consequences would be dire. His death would be painful and excruciating. The weight of the words crushed him, and he collapsed to the ground in fear. With a sigh of arrogance, Taehyung turned away and called for Nori. It was time to leave. She, finally snapping out of her daze, quickly agreed and followed him. Suho looked at Wai with a mixture of fear and pity. Wai, unable to hold back his emotions, broke into tears, covering his face with his hand. Suho sighed in concern. He didn't even want to think about what this encounter could lead to. It was better not to dwell on it. Sometime later, they returned home. The television broadcast blared breaking news: the National Intelligence Agency had officially registered a new S-class awakened in Korea. The name attached to the announcement was Taeyang Baiti. The news anchor went on to explain that Taeyang had single-handedly defeated a monster from an unknown gate, one that had suddenly opened above a shopping mall in Seoul. The footage played clips of the aftermath, showing destruction and the decapitated monster. Suho turned to Taeyang and remarked that he had now been officially recognized. Taeyang, however, was unimpressed. He reminded Suho that he had specifically asked for no unnecessary trouble. Suho sighed and shook his head. Unfortunately, trouble was unavoidable. After all, you're now the only S-class awakened in the entire country, and there are only 9 of your kind in the whole world. That alone set Taeyang apart from all the lower-level awakened. It wasn't an exaggeration. His strength was absolute. No organization, and certainly no other awakened person in Korea, could challenge him. Suho hoped that meant people would leave Taeyang alone, at least for now. But even as he scratched the back of his head nervously, he admitted there were still concerns. The biggest issue? The complete silence from other countries. Until now, South Korea had been at a disadvantage due to its lack of S-class awakened individuals. The global superpowers, namely the United States, China, and Japan, had always dominated. Korea had been pushed around by them for years, but with Taeyang's awakening, everything had changed. Both the United States and Japan had attempted to force South Korea into massive debt, using the sudden appearance of the unknown gate as leverage. Yet when news broke that the enemy had been eliminated, confusion set in. They had not anticipated this outcome. Nori observed Taeyang's expression carefully. His face remained unreadable, but Suho continued. Of course, their confusion won't last forever. They'll try to restore the balance of power, and that means eliminating any advantage we have. That was why allies were necessary recently. A request had arrived from a special unit of the U.S., Army Wolf. They were highly interested in Taeyang and had formally requested to meet him in person. At this, Taeyang immediately rejected the idea. Suho blinked in shock. Wait, you're refusing? This is an opportunity. We could gain an ally in the United States. Taeyang remained unmoved. He simply stated that he had no interest in any of this. His annoyance was palpable as he clenched his fist. I don't care about so-called powerful people, he muttered. What's really frustrating is that everything I bought on that rare shopping trip is now completely destroyed. He sighed, clearly displeased, and added, I just hope they don't keep bothering me. Nori and Suho exchanged uneasy glances. Mi, watching all of this, racked her brain. What could she say to convince him? She needed a way to make him reconsider. Then, suddenly, an idea struck her. She gasped slightly, then quickly spoke up. Wait, can I ask something? Taeyang turned to her, unimpressed. What is it? The Special Squad Wolf, isn't that the same unit that the S-Class Awakened Anderson is part of? Taeyang's expression didn't change, but she pressed on. He's said to be the strongest among all awakened, isn't he? Suho, seeing where she was going with this, confirmed it. That's right. Anderson, also known as Warlord, is considered the strongest awakened in the world. He then revealed something important. Anderson was actually the one who personally requested to meet you, Taeyang. At this, Taehyung's eyes flickered with interest. Now this was something different. He smirked. Well, that makes things interesting. Without hesitation, he changed his mind. All right, I don't mind going to the meeting after all. Nori was certain now her assumption had been correct. The only people capable of capturing Tieng's interest were those who matched him in strength. He had no patience for politics, power struggles, or the admiration of others, but someone like Ryan Anderson, the world's strongest awakened, was a different matter entirely. That was why he had so easily agreed to the meeting. It wasn't out of obligation, curiosity, or any sense of duty. It was purely because he wanted to measure Anderson's strength for himself. Sometime later, as they arrived at the airport, Jensen from the U.S. Army's Special Squad Wolf observed their surroundings with amusement, eager to see how they would be received. Shinen, another member of the squad, felt much differently. He was almost exasperated with Jensen's excitement and warned him not to stir up trouble like he always did. Jensen, however, took offense at the implication, questioning why he was always blamed for causing problems. Anderson, as the leader, quickly put an end to the discussion, reminding them that this was an official visit to an allied country. They couldn't afford to cause an incident like they had in the past. The Pentagon had assigned them a mission, and they needed to carry it out with professionalism. His words served as a clear warning that they had no room for mistakes. Jensen, though not one to easily obey orders without complaint, responded with a laugh, playfully promising that he would try not to make a scene. But once their objective was complete, he hinted that they could act freely, implying that restrictions would no longer apply to them. The elite U.S. Army Special Squad Wolf had arrived in South Korea with a purpose. Chenin, a skilled class awakened, reminded them once again that they were not in the country for leisure. The Pentagon had outlined 2 key missions for them. First, to recruit the newly awakened S-Class, and second, to assess his strength. Everything else was secondary. Their primary focus needed to be on the task at hand. Anderson acknowledged this, but there was an underlying tone of finality in his voice when he mentioned that if Tieng refused their offer, that would be the end for him. He didn't elaborate, but the implication was clear: there was no room for negotiation. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Tieng found himself growing bored of waiting for their arrival. He casually pulled out his phone and tuned into a special broadcast that was currently airing live. The news was centered around the S-Class hunter, Ryan Anderson, the very man he was about to meet. According to the report, Anderson was widely recognized as the strongest awakened in the world, a man capable of eliminating enemies strong enough to destroy entire nations. His legendary weapon, Excalibur, was highlighted as the key to many of his victories. As Tieng absorbed this information, he couldn't help but smirk. This man was truly one of the greatest fighters in the world, or so they claimed. Nori, standing beside him, suddenly pointed out that their guests had finally arrived. Tieng's expression shifted, a malicious smile spreading across his lips. Now, things were about to get interesting. Without hesitation, he declared that it was time for them to go. Nori excitedly motioned for him to follow her, thrilled by the prospect of meeting someone she had once idolized. However, she quickly reminded herself that her true master was no longer Anderson, but Tieng. As they made their way toward the meeting, Tieng's thoughts drifted elsewhere. He considered the technological limitations of this world. Unlike the realm he had once been in, Earth had yet to develop the technology necessary to modify the human body on a fundamental level. In the demon realm, he had undergone a procedure known as noise body modification, which had fundamentally altered his being. Because of this, he no longer considered himself a pure-blooded human. He had encountered countless formidable entities in the demon realm, yet none of them had been purely human. This meeting would provide him with an opportunity to test the strength of a true, unaltered human, the strongest one this world had to offer. The thought intrigued him. As they approached the entrance, Nori, still filled with excitement, opened the door for him with a respectful smile, inviting him to step inside. Tieng patted her head absent-mindedly, still lost in his own thoughts. Inside the meeting room, Anderson and Chenin turned toward the newcomers. Almost instantly, Tieng and Anderson locked eyes, and the atmosphere between them grew tense. There was no need for words; their gazes alone conveyed everything. The Director of National Intelligence, Young-gin, took the initiative to break the silence, remarking that they had finally gathered. With a polite demeanor, he introduced himself and extended his hand toward Tieng, mentioning that while he had heard much about him, this was their first official meeting. Though Young-gin expressed his pleasure at finally meeting face-to-face, Tieng completely ignored him. The blatant dismissal caused a wave of tension in the room. Nori, sensing the awkwardness, quickly apologized for Tieng's behavior. Young-gin, trying to maintain professionalism, chuckled and reassured her that it was fine. However, after a moment of hesitation, he retracted his hand, admitting that his primary concern was actually the American guests. Redirecting the conversation, he gestured toward the U.S. representatives, introducing them formally. Chenin was the first to step forward, greeting them in fluent Korean. His ability to speak the language surprised Nori, though she suspected that a translation spell was likely being used. However, while most of the attendees focused on introductions, Jensen was watching Tying with an expression of disbelief. He couldn't shake the feeling that Tying considered them beneath him, as though they weren't worth acknowledging. At the same time, Tying was occupied with something else entirely. He had activated his analysis skill on Anderson. What he discovered was impressive. Anderson's abilities were immense, capable of slaying dragons with ease. That level of power was undeniably remarkable. But before he could analyze further, Jensen, unable to ignore the situation any longer, suddenly stepped forward with a smirk. He made a sarcastic remark about how much attention Tying was giving Anderson, then, without warning, grabbed Tying's hand in an attempt to force a handshake. His grip was firm, his intent obvious. He wanted to test Tying's reaction. He questioned whether Tying understood the customs of his own country, implying that it was impolite to refuse such an interaction. However, Tying remained unmoved. Jensen, sensing resistance, tightened his grip, expecting Tying to either flinch or be forced to acknowledge him. Yet something strange happened. Almost immediately, he felt an unsettling sensation creeping over him, something he couldn't quite identify. His instincts screamed that something was wrong. The shift in energy was palpable. The tension in the room escalated as the air grew heavy. Before Jensen could react, Nori suddenly screamed, her voice filled with panic. She desperately warned him to stop. Tying's grip tightened around Jensen's hand with a crushing force, eliciting a sharp, agonized scream. The room fell silent, the air thick with tension as everyone turned in shock to witness the scene. Jensen, whose usual arrogance left him believing himself untouchable, had never imagined such overwhelming strength from another human. His instincts kicked in, and in a desperate bid to free himself, he activated his explosion skill, a technique that could incinerate anything within reach. The sudden surge of energy sent a blast through the air, causing Nuri to scream in alarm as she instinctively shielded the director with her own body. Chinan, now furious, clenched his fists and cursed under his breath. Jensen, in his impulsive foolishness, had just ruined everything. But something was wrong. Jensen's explosion skill abruptly ceased, its flames snuffed out as if swallowed by an unseen force. His panic-stricken eyes widened in disbelief. His ability had been neutralized. Before he could process what had happened, Tying struck him with a single powerful blow, sending him hurtling across the room like a rag doll. The impact was so forceful that the entire space trembled from the shock wave. Nori winced as the aftershock rippled through the air, nearly knocking her off balance. Anderson, watching the situation escalate, finally intervened. Without hesitation, he activated his abilities, his mere presence shifting the energy in the room. His deep voice rang out as he declared that this had gone on long enough. There was a sharp glint in his eyes as he reached for his weapon Excalibur and drew it in one swift motion, its blade gleaming with a dangerous aura. Despite his obvious discontent with his comrade's actions, he knew Ting's response had been just as excessive. His tone was calm but firm as he apologized on Jensen's behalf, acknowledging his subordinate's rudeness while subtly implying that Ting's reaction had been just as severe. With a level stare, he posed a simple question: was this where they should end it? Tying, standing unfazed amid the tension, let out a sharp grin. He agreed. There was no reason to waste more time on this nonsense. Anderson, satisfied with the answer, slid his weapon back into its sheath and immediately turned to Chinan, instructing him to remove Jensen from the area. Chinan complied with a sigh, already tired of dealing with Jensen's reckless attitude. Meanwhile, Suho, who had been watching everything unfold with increasing anxiety, felt a cold chill creeping down his spine. He had a bad feeling about all of this. There was no way they could avoid further conflict at this rate. His instincts told him this would only escalate, so he decided it would be wise to call for medical support in advance. Nuri, who had been quiet for a moment, suddenly stepped forward with an eager look. With admiration in her eyes, she offered to accompany them to the infirmary, explaining that they had a doctor on standby who could assist with any injuries. Chinan, grateful for the offer, nodded in appreciation. Anderson, ever the professional, turned to Tying once more, this time offering a more formal apology. He explained that Jensen was difficult to control, and hopefully, this incident would serve as a lesson for him. His voice held no fear, no hesitation, only the confident tone of someone who had dealt with countless strong individuals before. Tying, however, had little interest in prolonging the conversation. He made it clear that he hated wasting time on pointless fights. If Anderson had something important to discuss, then he should speak up now rather than continue with useless pleasantries. Anderson took a moment to assess him before finally getting to the real reason for their meeting. He asked Tying directly if he would consider joining them in the United States. Naturally, there would be significant benefits involved: wealth, resources, influence. Everything Tying could ever need or want would be provided if he agreed to work with them. Tying, completely unfazed, refused without a second thought. His voice was sharp, leaving no room for misinterpretation. He had no interest in their offer. Holman, one of the national intelligence officers, immediately erupted in outrage. He practically shouted in indignation, accusing the United States of trying to steal Korea's only S-class awakened. His voice echoed through the room as he demanded answers, his tone filled with both anger and panic. Anderson, caught off guard by the reaction, looked genuinely surprised. Had he misheard something? Tying, now visibly losing patience, warned them not to make him repeat himself. His rejection had been final. He had no intention of discussing it further. However, deep down, he had been waiting for this outcome. There was no real reason for him to work with them. He had no desire for alliances or diplomatic games. What he was truly interested in was testing Anderson's strength. He could see it in Anderson's eyes as well, the same curiosity, the same hunger for a challenge. Without hesitation, he coated his entire body with mana, making his intentions crystal clear. Wasn't Anderson just as interested in seeing who was stronger? If that was the case, then they should settle it with their fists. Anderson's lips curled into a smile. It was an excellent idea. Meanwhile, in the infirmary, an exhausted medic had just finished healing Jensen's injured arm with his abilities. As the energy flowed through his limb, the pain gradually faded, but Jensen was far from grateful. He turned to Chinan with a scowl, his voice filled with frustration as he blamed him for what had happened. Crossing his arms, he continued to sulk, refusing to take responsibility for his own reckless actions. But Chinan had no patience for his nonsense. With a sharp tone, he made it clear that this was Jensen's own fault. Jensen's anger flared, and he shouted with frustration, his words laced with resentment. He ranted about how the new S-class had no respect for anyone, questioning how someone like Tying could act so arrogantly, even in the presence of the world's strongest awakened. How could Anderson remain so calm after such an insult? Did he not feel humiliated? Chinan's response was simple. What reaction was he expecting? Tying was one of the strongest S-class awakened in existence. It was only natural for someone at his level to be arrogant. Strength justified arrogance, and Tying had proven that he was worthy of it. Jensen fell silent, the memory of Tying's overwhelming power replaying in his mind like a nightmare. Chinan, seeing his hesitation, decided to drive the point home. Their team wasn't powerful because of people like Jensen. They were strong only because of Anderson. Jensen, in truth, was just lucky he had been born with a powerful ability, but that didn't make him truly skilled. He needed to remember his place. Jensen lashed out in response, shouting that he already knew all of this. But that didn't change his frustration. He still refused to acknowledge Tying's power. There was no way that someone from such a small country could be a real S-class awakened. It was impossible. Nori, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up. With irritation in her voice, she reminded them just how lucky they were that things had ended the way they did. If Tying had truly wanted to, he could have killed all of them without breaking a sweat. Chinan and Jensen turned to her, staring in disbelief. Jensen, letting out a laugh, mocked her words. Did she really believe that? Was she seriously comparing Tying to Anderson? His laughter was sharp and condescending as he dismissed her entirely, but Nori stood her ground, her voice unwavering. She knew one thing for certain. Her master Tying was the strongest man in the world. Jensen's laughter only grew louder. The audacity of it amused him beyond belief. With a smirk, he sneered at her declaration, claiming that her foolish dreams would soon be shattered. Anderson was about to put an end to Tying's arrogance, and when he did, the truth would become clear to everyone. Homan sat in stunned silence, trying to piece together how things had escalated to this point. Was this all part of a prearranged test to gauge the true combat strength of the United States forces? Even if it was just a duel, this was still a battle between two S-class awakened. The destructive potential was beyond comprehension. Watching the fight unfold through the monitor, he muttered to himself that, at the very least, they should refrain from demolishing the entire building in the process. Inside the arena, Anderson stood firm, gripping Excalibur tightly in his hand. He turned to Tying and asked whether he planned to fight barehanded. The idea was absurd after all, this was not an ordinary fight. Tying, however, scoffed at the notion, stating that fighting without a weapon against Anderson would be foolish. Despite his overwhelming power, he wasn't arrogant enough to take on a weapon master without one of his own. But there was one key difference: his weapon mastery skill was at level 8, which was essentially godlike in this world. In his eyes, this battle was already decided. As Tying made his decision, a system window materialized in front of him, listing his opponent's skills. Anderson's abilities were undeniably formidable. Heavenly Weapon Mastery Level 3, Close Combat Level 5, Weapon Aura Kill Level 5, and Wind Strike Level 5. These were all high-ranking abilities, ones that had secured Anderson's reputation as the world's strongest S-Class awakened. However, Ting's weapon mastery alone was level 8. The difference in pure technique was staggering. Smirking, he deliberated on which weapon to use. There was only one correct choice. His mind flashed back to the day he ascended to the top of the demon realm, the moment his most loyal subordinates forged a weapon in his honor. That blade, a symbol of his dominance, would be the one he wielded today. Anderson, watching Ting with sharp eyes, felt a surge of unease as he witnessed a portal open before him. He clenched his jaw. How was he able to open a portal in the middle of the battle? Was this an extension of his mysterious system? Before he could react, Ting casually reached inside and withdrew a colossal blade crackling with raw energy. His expression remained indifferent as he stated that he had finally found a weapon worthy of this duel. He named it Thunderblade, his favorite weapon. Anderson's gaze sharpened. He had never seen a weapon quite like this before. It radiated an overwhelming power, one he could feel even from a distance. However, he wasn't about to be intimidated. He acknowledged Ting's choice, but stated that it was an honor for his opponent to hold his weapon in such high regard. However, Anderson had no intention of backing down. His weapon, Excalibur, was one of the most powerful in existence, capable of cutting down enemies that could wipe out entire nations. He knew he was unmatched in close combat. But at the same time, there was something strange about Ting's fighting style. He wasn't an ordinary warrior, he was a mage. Yet, despite his magical background, he had chosen to rely solely on weapon mastery for this battle. That meant he was confident that his weapon skills alone would be enough to challenge Anderson. Hearing Ting's words, Anderson narrowed his eyes. Such arrogance. He would make him regret it. With an explosive burst of power, he lunged forward, propelling himself toward his opponent in a single leap. Excalibur sliced through the air, its energy cutting apart everything in its path. The sheer force behind the attack sent shockwaves tearing through the room, strong enough to shatter stone and metal alike. Ting, however, calmly evaded the attack, his expression barely shifting as he gracefully moved out of range. Homan, still watching through the screen, felt his stomach tighten. The sheer destructive force of their weapons was unreal. How was Anderson able to split the floor of the building with a single swing? If that attack had connected, it could have easily killed a level 7 monster in an instant. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. This was the pinnacle of weapon combat. Ting, meanwhile, observed Anderson's form with a smirk. Not bad, but not good enough. Anderson, seeing that his opponent had dodged without even blinking, felt his blood boil with frustration. Ting's calm, arrogant expression was infuriating. He had never met someone who could avoid his attacks so effortlessly. That smirk, it needed to be wiped off his face. Without hesitation, Anderson launched into a flurry of attacks, each strike faster and more precise than the last. His swordsmanship was masterful, his control over Excalibur's power absolute. The sheer speed and intensity of his movements forced even the most skilled warriors to struggle against him. However, Ting remained composed, parrying each blow with effortless precision. His counterattacks were calculated, his movements fluid and refined. He didn't block, he redirected. Each time Anderson struck, Ting would adjust the angle of his blade just enough to deflect the force away from himself, ensuring that Anderson's attacks never truly connected. Then, Ting's grin widened. It was time to raise the difficulty level. In an instant, his speed increased. With a powerful, well-timed strike, he knocked Anderson off balance and sent him crashing into the ground. The impact was deafening. The arena shook as Anderson struggled to get back up, using Excalibur for support. Ting, standing tall, watched him with satisfaction. This was exactly what he wanted. Anderson was the strongest human. He didn't want the fight to end too soon. Anderson gritted his teeth, gripping his weapon tightly. His mind raced. His opponent's strength was beyond anything he had encountered before. It reminded him of the time he had fought the level 5 demon nicknamed Bonesetter, a monster with a skeleton so dense and unbreakable that even his strongest attacks had barely affected it. That battle had been long and brutal, one of the hardest fights of his life. It was that victory that had solidified his status as an S-Class awakened. After the battle, he had taken a bone from the fallen monster, and from that material Excalibur had been forged. It was a weapon that could never be broken, and as its wielder, Anderson knew that he himself must never be broken either. Refusing to stay down, Anderson rose to his feet once more, his grip on Excalibur tightening. His determination was unwavering. Ting smiled. That was more like it. Anderson, now fully committed, declared that he acknowledged Tying's strength. But that didn't mean he would back down. This battle would only end in one way: death. Tying's grin disappeared, replaced by a cold, furious expression. That was exactly what he wanted. Homan, his hands clutching his head, felt himself spiraling into panic as he watched the fight unfold. This was getting out of hand. Anderson was serious about fighting to the death. There was no way they could allow this to continue. Anderson, his eyes burning with resolve, tightened his grip around Excalibur. He warned Tying that he should be ready because this time he would try to kill him. Gathering his energy, he activated his strongest ability. Tying immediately felt the pressure in the air change. His instincts sharpened something was coming. Anderson lunged forward, his weapon shaking violently, but it wasn't an ordinary vibration. It was something else. It wasn't just a weapon technique, it was something more. Tying watched with fascination. This ability, it was interesting. Anderson swung Excalibur directly at his neck. Taehyung watched as Excalibur hovered dangerously close to his neck, his gaze unwavering. Instead of fear, his thoughts were filled with excitement. This was exactly what he wanted: to push Anderson to his limits, to make him fight with everything he had. If Anderson truly believed himself to be the strongest awakened, then he had to prove it. Tying wouldn't settle for anything less. He wanted to see Anderson at his full power. However, there was one problem: if they continued like this, the entire building would be reduced to rubble, and the lives of lower beings would be caught in the crossfire. That thought, while insignificant compared to the thrill of battle, lingered in the back of his mind. Meanwhile, in the control room, Homan was losing his mind. Clutching his head in utter disbelief, he stared at the battle unfolding on the monitor. There was no way this was still a trial fight. This had become something far more dangerous. If either combatant was seriously injured, the repercussions would be severe. An international scandal was already brewing. Desperation creeping into his voice, he shouted that they had to stop them immediately. But how? How could anyone stop two S-class awakened warriors in the middle of a full-powered duel? One of the analysts, adjusting his glasses, turned to the director with an air of grim acceptance. He acknowledged that he agreed with Homan, but their hands were tied. They lacked a third S-class awakened without one. Interfering in this battle was impossible. Stopping monsters of this caliber required another monster. Unfortunately, they had none. That left only one option: pray that the fight would end without a catastrophe. Serena, who had been watching silently, spoke up. She mentioned Taehyung's name, expressing her belief that he was fully aware of his own power. He wasn't reckless, he knew how much destruction he could cause, and because of that, he wouldn't allow himself to lose control. There wouldn't be a tragic ending, she was sure of it. But no sooner had the words left her mouth than a deafening crash shook the room. Her confidence wavered, and with a nervous chuckle, she admitted that she could be wrong. Homan, his nerves fraying, hesitated before agreeing with her. Judging by Taehyung's actions so far, it seemed like he was actually trying to protect their country. If that was the case, then perhaps Serena was right. Perhaps he wouldn't completely destroy everything. But then again, the way this battle was escalating, nothing was certain. Inside the battlefield, Tying and Anderson clashed violently, their weapons colliding with enough force to send shockwaves through the structure. Each strike shook the very foundation of the building, making the walls groan under the pressure. Serena's face paled in fear. If they didn't stop soon, the entire structure would collapse. Anderson, on the other hand, was consumed by a single thought: he was the strongest awakened. There was no one stronger than him, no one who could surpass him, not in this world, not even Tying. With that belief fueling his actions, he drove his weapon straight into Taehyung's stomach. But instead of pain or even shock, Tying smiled. His expression was one of amusement, not fear. He remarked that Anderson was getting carried away. He would love to continue this fight, but there was a problem. By fighting inside this building, they were putting too many people in danger. Tying's eyes narrowed as he teleported next to Anderson in an instant, his movements too fast to track. Anderson, reacting purely on instinct, swung Excalibur, attempting to land another strike. But Tying caught the blade with his bare hand, stopping it effortlessly. Without breaking eye contact, he released a surge of dark energy, coating his entire body in pure, suffocating power. They needed to take this fight elsewhere. Anderson ripped his weapon free, stepping back in stunned silence. What was this overwhelming energy? It wasn't just power, it was killing intent. For the first time, fear crept into Anderson's heart. He tightened his grip on Excalibur, his instincts screaming at him to be on guard. Tying, without hesitation, unleashed a devastating attack. Anderson barely managed to block, the sheer force sending him skidding backward. As he steadied himself, his thoughts raced. Why was he afraid? It made no sense. He was the strongest awakened in the world. He had faced countless enemies, defeated nightmare-level threats, and won battles that others deemed impossible. And yet, in the presence of Tiang's energy, he felt his own mortality like never before. Anderson clenched his jaw. This was unacceptable. This was not possible. This was not reality. His frustration reached its peak as he roared in defiance, charging at Tiang once more. He activated Wind Strike, his most lethal technique, and swung his weapon with the full force of his abilities. But just before his attack landed, the battlefield was swallowed in darkness. Tiang's dark energy corrupted the very air, creating an oppressive void that absorbed Anderson's ability before it could even take effect. Anderson's expression twisted into one of horror. What kind of power was this? Pain shot through his arm as his own weapon betrayed him, absorbing Tai Hyung's dark energy and turning against him. He screamed in agony, struggling to pull Excalibur back, but the weapon refused to obey. Tiang, watching with cold amusement, remarked that pride was a privilege reserved only for the truly strong. Anderson, for all his boasting, had proven himself unworthy. How could he claim to be the strongest in the world when he couldn't even protect himself? With that final declaration, Tiang delivered a devastating blow, sending Anderson crashing into the ground. The entire building trembled from the impact. Homan let out a strangled gasp, his face pale with shock. Everyone else in the room was equally stunned. The battle had taken a brutal turn, and now Anderson was struggling to stand. Tiang, smiling wickedly, raised his hand in triumph, mocking the fallen warrior. The strongest in the world? What a joke. Outside, chaos erupted as ordinary people fled the crumbling structure. The sheer force of the battle had caused the very earth to shake, and civilians ran in panic as the terrifying sounds of combat echoed in the air. Meanwhile, in the infirmary, Nuri and Jensen felt the pressure of the battle surging through the walls. Jensen, with a smug grin, remarked that the fight had finally begun. He was practically giddy with excitement, taking pleasure in what he believed was Tiang's inevitable defeat. Pointing his index finger at Nuri, he cruelly suggested that she should start mourning her master now. He mocked her, stating that her so-called master had no chance against Anderson. By now, Tiang was already on his knees, begging for mercy. Nuri, filled with rage, glared at him with undisguised fury. How dare he speak about her master that way? Her body trembled, but not from fear, from anger. With a furious cry, she commanded him to shut up. Light energy surged around her, illuminating the infirmary as she prepared herself for a fight of her own. She could no longer listen to his nonsense. Jensen looked at Nuri with visible annoyance, clearly unimpressed by her sudden outburst. Chinan, however, observed her carefully, his analytical mind immediately picking up on something unusual. Her loyalty toward this Korean S-Class awakened was evident, but it wasn't just admiration, her devotion went beyond that of a mere maid. There was something off about her aura, something powerful yet unfamiliar. While she wasn't classified as a class, she had clearly trained under Tiang. The energy radiating from her suggested she wasn't someone to be taken lightly, which meant they needed to tread carefully around her. Jensen, naturally oblivious to caution, mocked her outright, his voice laced with sarcasm and ridicule. Did she seriously want to fight him? He sneered, questioning whether she had released her aura just to play soccer, dismissing her presence as nothing more than an overreaction. Chunsin, who had been watching silently, almost laughed at Jensen's recklessness. The fool didn't even realize that his taunting might actually provide them with useful information. But it was already too late. Nori, without hesitation, confirmed his challenge. She wanted to fight. If Jensen wanted a battle, then she would dominate it. She needed to establish herself as the one in control. As she prepared to strike, memories flooded her mind. She could still remember the moment when she had asked Tiang a simple question as his maid. Shouldn't she strive to be as tough and strong as him? Tiang had barely reacted, answering with an almost bored expression. Strength, he had told her, was always cool. If she wanted to be respected, she must never let anyone look down on her. Those words had stayed with her. She had listened carefully as he continued, reminding her that bravery was essential, but underestimating an opponent was a fool's mistake. She was never to retreat. If someone dared to strike first, she was to strike back even harder. Her eyes snapped open, her entire body charged with energy. The time had come to prove herself. As she activated her abilities, she spoke with conviction, promising that Jensen would regret ever insulting her master. Jensen, who had expected her to back down, suddenly found himself feeling uneasy. Was she really serious about this fight? He had been mocking her, expecting her to shrink away, yet here she was, fully committed. A nervous flicker crossed his face as he glanced toward his comrade, searching for some guidance. But Chinan merely shrugged. This was Jensen's mess to clean up now. Realizing there was no way out, Jensen turned back to her and decided to act tough, ordering Chenin to stay quiet and let him handle things. However, before he could say anything else, Nori was already attacking. With fury in her eyes, she rushed forward, raising her weapon high, striking down with all her strength. Jensen reacted just in time, using his abilities to shield himself and his comrade. He gritted his teeth as he deflected the blow, staggering back slightly from the impact. He grunted in irritation and scoffed. Why was she so angry? Was she really ready to rip out an honored guest's throat over some insults? He shook his head, half laughing, and admitted that maybe they had taken things too far. With a mocking smirk, he suggested that it would be better for them to stop here, but Nori wasn't buying it. With a cold glare, she demanded to know why they were suddenly backing down. They had started this conflict, they had insulted her master, and yet now they wanted to walk away without an apology? Her voice grew sharper, her tone unyielding. She had no intention of killing anyone, but she wasn't going to let this go unpunished. Mi, standing at a distance, suddenly jumped into a battle stance, shouting that these scum deserved to be taught a lesson. Her voice was filled with determination, and the aura around her flared up with deadly intent. Jensen's smirk widened. So that was how it was going to be? Fine. If she was so determined, then they would finish this fight. Chenin, realizing that things were spiraling out of control, warned Jensen to stop provoking her further. But Jensen, grinning maliciously, activated his skill, launching deadly ice shards toward Nori. The frozen projectiles ripped through the air as they sped toward their target. Yet Nori didn't flinch. Instead of retreating, she charged forward straight into the attack, her determination unwavering. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the building, Taiying carried Anderson over his shoulder, making his way toward the exit. But the distant sound of battle caught his attention. Without much thought, he dropped Anderson to the ground, muttering that there was no need for concern he hadn't killed him, though Anderson would need serious medical attention. The man with glasses, observing the state of the fallen warrior, nodded and stated that he understood. Serena, who had been watching everything in tense silence, remained fixated on the scene before her. Holman, forcing a nervous smile, couldn't help but feel immensely grateful that Taiying had at least spared Anderson's life. If Anderson had actually died, the consequences would have been catastrophic. The Director of National Intelligence, staring at Anderson's defeated form, was utterly shocked. This was supposed to be the world's strongest awakened, and yet he had lost. This wasn't just an ordinary battle, this changed everything. For the first time, he realized the truth: their nation, South Korea, now had the strongest awakened in the world. With Taiying's power, their country was no longer weak. They could stand against the United States, China, and any other nation that had ever tried to manipulate them. Taiying, sensing the director's thoughts, suddenly spoke, his voice low and menacing. He told him outright that he knew exactly what he was thinking. Homan's breath caught in his throat, his nerves spiking. Taiying continued, stating that the only reason he had fought Anderson was out of curiosity, not for politics, not for power games. He didn't care about the global balance of power. He had no interest in their schemes. But then, his expression hardened. With an icy glare, he warned them that they could do whatever they wanted, but they should never involve him in their affairs. His voice darkened, emphasizing that he would not tolerate being used. With that, he turned away, announcing that he was leaving and had no intention of being disturbed further. However, as he walked further into the building, he felt another surge of energy. The sounds of battle grew louder, and then he saw an ice spell in action. His eyes narrowed as he spotted Nori breathing heavily, her body covered in injuries. Jensen, standing across from her, laughed as he activated his next attack, his voice filled with mocking amusement. He complimented her for holding out for so long, but this fight was over. Chenin, observing from the sidelines, was convinced that Jensen would win, but he couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief. How had this fight dragged on for so long? How was Nori still standing? Jensen's world flipped upside down the moment Taiying appeared. 1 second, he was relishing the sight of Nori struggling against his ice, his moment of dominance, of proving that she and her so-called master were beneath him. The next, his vision was blocked entirely by a monstrous force clutching his face. Dark energy surged around them, twisting the air into something thick and suffocating, like the breath of death itself. Taiying had arrived, and he was furious. The aura that surrounded him was unlike anything Jensen had ever encountered. Pure, suffocating, killing intent seeped into every corner of the room, making it nearly impossible to move. How? How had he arrived so suddenly? Hadn't he lost to Anderson? That was impossible. Anderson was the strongest awakened S-class. There was no way he could have lost. And yet, here Taiying was, standing in front of him, unscathed, staring at him with eyes that burned with a desire to kill. Jensen, feeling his instincts scream at him to fight back, activated his ability in a desperate attempt to break free. Explosions of ice surged from his hands, crackling violently as they tried to freeze the enemy in place. But nothing happened. Tying did not react. He did not flinch. He didn't even acknowledge the attack as the shards of ice disintegrated before reaching him, as if the very air around him refused to allow their existence. Jensen gasped, realizing just how dire his situation was. His entire body screamed in pain as Tying tightened his grip, effortlessly lifting him off the ground. The sound of cracking bone echoed in his ears, making his panic grow tenfold. Then, with terrifying force, Tying slammed him into the ground, the impact so powerful that the entire floor shattered beneath them. A deafening boom reverberated through the building as dust and debris exploded outward, causing even Chinen to step back in shock. This was not a fight anymore. This was execution. Taehyung, his face devoid of any humanity, gazed down at Jensen as if he were nothing more than an insect. His expression didn't just hold anger, it was murderous rage, an animalistic fury, cold and merciless. The entire room felt like it was being swallowed by the abyss. Jensen, dazed and barely able to breathe, struggled to process how fast everything had changed. One moment he was victorious. The next, he was at death's door. Tying's voice, low and deadly, rumbled through the destruction, a sound that sent an instinctual chill down everyone's spine. How dare he touch what belonged to him? How dare he lay a hand on what was his? His words weren't shouted, nor were they exaggerated with anger. They were simple, calm, and final, like the judgment of an executioner. Jensen, despite his pride, felt fear crawl up his throat. This was no longer a battle of strength. This was pure dominance. His mind reeled. Was this truly the same man who had fought Anderson? It shouldn't have been possible for him to be here, let alone standing so unscathed. Yet there was no mistaking the reality before him. Ting's killing intent thickened, making it difficult to even breathe. His presence alone was crushing, and it was becoming abundantly clear that he had been holding back this entire time. Chinen, who had been standing at a distance, felt a bead of sweat roll down his temple. If Anderson, the man they had all placed their faith in as the strongest in the world, had truly lost to this person, then everything they believed about power was a lie. Ting turned slightly, his gaze sweeping across the room like the Reaper himself. They had dared to lay hands on what belonged to him, and for that they would all pay. Just as he was about to unleash another devastating attack, Nori, her body trembling but her resolve unshaken, blocked his path. She stood before him, her injuries severe but her eyes determined. Despite the pain racking her body, she raised a weak but firm hand, insisting that she was already fine and that there was no need for him to kill anyone. Her expression was not one of fear but sadness, as if she knew what kind of darkness would be unleashed if he continued. Tying, his fury still burning, looked at her, his gaze softening slightly. She had tried. Despite her current state, she had fought with everything she had to defend his name. He walked toward her and, without a word, caught her just as she nearly collapsed. Nori, tears welling in her eyes, whispered that she had failed. She hadn't been strong enough. Tying, still supporting her with one arm, spoke with rare gentleness. She had failed, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that she had tried. That was enough. He raised his other hand, a faint energy radiating from his fingertips as he healed her wounds. Nori stared at him in surprise, feeling the pain fade as warmth spread through her body. She had witnessed his power many times, but never had she experienced it this closely. Tying, his expression unreadable, wrapped one arm around her before turning his cold gaze back to Chinen. Suddenly, a static-filled radio transmission crackled through the silence. Ting repeated the words aloud, making sure everyone in the room heard them. The message was simple, direct, and world-shattering. The United States' strongest S-class awakened has been defeated. The words hung in the air, sending shockwaves through everyone present. Chinen, frozen in place, could barely comprehend what he was hearing. The strongest awakened, defeated? The United States had lost its position as the most powerful awakened force? Tying, smirking as he lifted Nori into his arms, gave one final warning. They should leave this country before he changed his mind. Chinen watched silently, his mind racing. From this day forward, the title of the strongest country would no longer belong to the United States. No, it had been taken by the devil himself. Sometime later, at the Ares Guild headquarters, the weight of the battle still lingered in the air. A television broadcast echoed through the Grand Hall, announcing that Team Wolf had concluded their short visit to Korea and were heading back to the U.S. However, the reasons for their sudden departure were still unknown. Both the United States and South Korea refused to give any public statement regarding what had transpired. However, an anonymous source leaked a report that confirmed one thing: they had met with South Korea's S-class awakened. Sitting on a luxurious couch, Kim Un-suk, the head of the Aries Guild, clenched his jaw in frustration. He leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, cursing under his breath. Something impossible had happened. If Taeyang had truly defeated Anderson, then their entire power structure was at risk. Grinding his teeth, he muttered that with someone like Taeyang in control, they would never achieve anything. More than that, the Korean National Intelligence Agency had gotten to him first. On the opposite side of the room, Young-suk exhaled tiredly, staring at the ceiling. He wasn't as outwardly furious as Ki-moon, but the implications of what had happened weighed on him. Smiling faintly, he admitted that they couldn't claim something they didn't even understand. If they wanted to control this new power, they had to meet him first. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Serena shifted uncomfortably, her gaze flickering between the television screen and Taeyang. She was nervous. The broadcast continued playing some mindless entertainment program, but the true tension in the room was between them. Taeyang, completely unfazed, opened a can of soda with a bored expression. He didn't care. Nori let out a nervous laugh, but Serena's irritation was obvious. She sighed heavily, explaining that they needed to move. Taeyang glanced at her, unamused. He had just gotten there. Why exactly should he move again? Serena scratched the back of her head, laughing awkwardly. She admitted after a moment that there was a very good reason. The sudden presence of journalists swarming the area had caused an uproar. Their voices blended into a chaotic murmur as they crowded around, cameras flashing, eager to report on the S-class awakened who had shaken the world. Serena, her expression tense, immediately explained the situation to Taeyang. His current place of residence had been leaked to the public. There was no telling how many people knew, but one thing was certain: if he stayed here, his peace would be permanently disrupted. Tae-hyung stared at her seriously, unconcerned with the situation itself, but clearly expecting a solution. Serena, realizing that she needed to convince him quickly, hurriedly bowed her head, almost in desperation. She knew how much he hated unnecessary trouble, so they had already arranged a perfect alternative. They were offering him a place on an island, completely isolated from the rest of the world. There, no one would be able to bother him, and he would be able to live in absolute peace. She nervously added that they had built a fully equipped house there, something specifically designed for his comfort. If he just visited it once, she was certain he would like it. Finally, she pleaded with him politely, asking him to at least consider her request this one time. Taeyang remained thoughtful, his gaze shifting from Serena's anxious expression to his subordinate, Nuri. When his eyes met hers, he saw something different: excitement. Her usual calm demeanor had been replaced with pure joy, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. She looked like someone who had just been granted a lifelong dream. Noticing her enthusiasm, Taeyang finally asked, was she interested in this place? Nori nodded eagerly, smiling brightly. She admitted that she was. After all, she had always dreamed of living in a house on an island. She hesitated for a moment before glancing at him awkwardly, as if realizing she might have spoken too freely. Then, with a small, sheepish voice, she asked for his forgiveness for pushing her own desires into the decision. Serena, watching the exchange, held her breath. Had she been too forward? Had she been too casual? If Taeyang was offended by her suggestion, she might not live to see another day. She inwardly cursed herself, praying she hadn't stepped over the line. But just as she was about to spiral into panic, Taeyang finally spoke. He agreed to go. Serena's eyes widened in pure shock. For a moment she was frozen, unable to believe what she had just heard. Then, in a burst of overwhelming relief and joy, her eyes filled with tears. She could barely process the fact that he had actually agreed. He had never been the type to be persuaded by others, yet somehow, this time, it had worked. Without wasting another second, she declared that it was time for them to head there. Sometime later, they arrived at their new home. As soon as they stepped onto the island, Nuri's expression lit up with excitement. She took in the breathtaking surroundings, the pristine beaches, the luxurious residence, and the utter tranquility of the place. With a huge smile, she turned to him and asked, was this really where they were going to live now? It was beyond what she had expected. Serena, standing beside her, beamed with pride. She explained that they had purchased the entire island and built a resort-level home for him. Everything was designed for absolute privacy. No one would be able to disturb him here. The location was completely secluded, far from the rest of the world, ensuring that he would never have to deal with reporters, government officials, or enemies unless he chose to.
She screamed as Demon released her arms, pushing her off the skyship without any warning given.
Falling rapidly, Xi's eyes widened in shock. The vast ocean below seemed ready to swallow her whole. Determined not to panic, she scanned the sky, noticing Demon diving towards her with incredible black wings. Catching her firmly midair, Demon stabilized their descent. His wings spread wide, breaking their dangerous freefall immediately. Meanwhile, inside the headquarters, Manager Harlow ordered faster preparations. "Stay alert! They'll arrive sooner than expected!" Manager Harlow raised his head, confirming their approach. His tense expression betrayed hidden concerns about Demon's return. Demon descended gracefully, black wings spreading wide. He landed perfectly, still holding Xi securely in his arms. The landing startled the nearby workers. They quickly organized crates, trying to hide their nervous glances towards Demon. Xi, relieved and grateful, whispered softly, "Thank you, Master." Demon nodded, his eyes already scanning the surroundings carefully. Manager Harlow announced confidently, "This is where we're going to live!" Everyone stared silently, unsure about this decision. Demon reassured Xi calmly, "Feel at ease. Everything has been properly prepared for our arrival today." She was surprised by the large, welcoming crowd. Manager Harlow confirmed, "No, we've been waiting your arrival." Introducing himself formally, Harlow spoke, "My name is Go Chang-sok. I'll ensure your life remains comfortable here." Demon nodded with approval. His confident gaze scanned the gathered staff, ensuring loyalty and discipline among them. Harlow stepped forward politely. "Please come in, I'll show you around," he offered, leading them toward the entrance. Xi's eyes sparkled. "Look, Master, it's amazing, just like a hotel!" she exclaimed, running ahead excitedly. Demon observed quietly. "It's decent inside, too, but something still feels incomplete," he thought to himself. With a serious tone, Demon commanded, "Let's see what you've got, butler." His expectations were clearly high. Manager Go Chang-seok responded confidently, "I'm sure you'll be pleased." His staff immediately prepared for the presentation. She gasped joyfully at the lavish feast prepared. Her excitement grew as delicious aromas filled the room. She gasped in delight, eyes wide. Colorful desserts appeared before her, while Demon calmly sipped his drink. Later, they joined a lively drum performance. She matched every beat enthusiastically. Demon watched her silently, amused. Excitement continued at the beach. She laughed freely, splashing into the water while the crowd cheered around them. Manager Go Chang-sok approached Demon, asking carefully, "Satisfied?" Demon leaned back, relaxing completely for the first time. Demon gazed at the clear sky. "I must admit it's not bad," he said, sipping his drink calmly. While she played joyfully, Demon received a mysterious message. His expression shifted slightly, sensing coming events. Lying relaxed, Demon smirked after reading the message. His eyes gleamed faintly. "It's going to be fun!" A helicopter approached rapidly, scattering leaves. Its arrival marked the beginning of something important and possibly dangerous. She and Demon stood side by side. Both watched curiously as the helicopter prepared for landing nearby. A mysterious figure stepped out confidently, smiling faintly. "It's been a while," he greeted, eyes locked on Demon. Demon greeted the mysterious man formally. "Thank you for taking up our offer," the man responded respectfully. The man smiled faintly, turning his head. "I'd like to introduce someone important," he said confidently. "This is Miss Lee Yujin, the newest NAS member and an A-class awakener," he introduced proudly. Lee Yujin walked forward gracefully, eyes locked onto Demon. Her confident steps drew everyone's quiet attention immediately. Observing Demon from a distance, Lee Yujin asked curiously, "Is that him?" Her gaze remained unwavering. Demon sipped his drink casually, completely unfazed by the tense atmosphere forming around the unexpected introduction. Lee Yujin narrowed her eyes, confused. "What is this?" she wondered, struggling to hide her growing disappointment. She mentally scoffed. "An S-class title? He's just a bum. And why is there a kid?" She, sensing the tension, bravely spoke up. "Hey, it's common courtesy to greet someone upon arrival." Lee Yujin smirked coldly. "A kid like you has no place here. Get out of the way," she protested loudly, defending Demon. "He's amazing. You shouldn't speak about people without knowing anything first." Manager Go quickly tried calming Yujin. "Please understand, Miss..." Yujin's newly awakened, she's unfamiliar with proper decorum. Demon remained calm, sipping his drink. "Leave her be," he muttered indifferently. "I'm not going to waste time." Manager Go panicked. "I'm very sorry, Miss... Yujin recently became an A-class awakener. She's still quite arrogant." Demon chuckled softly, standing straight. "Funny," he said. "So, you're A-class? I guess you're kind of powerful then." Lee Yujin smirked confidently. "But if you're powerful, you should recognize differences between you and opponents." Suddenly, an overwhelming, oppressive aura burst from Demon. Surrounding the area with terrifying, suffocating demonic energy, Demon's aura dominated everything. An ant's bravado only provokes a king. "It's about to get unpleasant," he warned. Yujin stumbled backward, trembling. What's this?" "I've never felt anything like this before," she whispered, completely overwhelmed.
Meanwhile, she stood proudly. Manager Go nervously wiped his forehead, knowing Demon's power had silenced the arrogance. Demon withdrew his overwhelming presence. "I'll leave it at that," he said, completely unfazed by the confrontation. Lee Yujin collapsed to the ground, breathing heavily. What was that? A test? I nearly froze." Manager Go quickly apologized, bowing deeply. "I'm very sorry. I believe she's definitely learned her lesson now." Demon smiled faintly. "It's fine. I'm intrigued," he admitted, finding amusement in how events had unfolded today. Yujin stood up slowly, recovering her composure. "Follow me," she instructed, her tone more respectful than before. Yujin pointed at she. "Subordinate, you too." She startled, wide-eyed. "Me?" she asked nervously, stepping forward. Yujin spoke firmly. "I want to see what you can do." She's expression quickly shifted to determination. She charged forward, fists clenched. "I don't like that. Don't treat me like a child," she shouted. With unwavering confidence, she declared, "I'm good enough to stand by my master's side." Her eyes sparkled fiercely. Yujin smiled faintly, turning away. "Take care." She responded respectfully. "You take care as well." Mutual respect was earned. She stepped forward confidently. "Let's begin," she declared, her determination shining clearly in her focused expression. Lee Yujin narrowed her eyes. Sensing she's resolve, she silently acknowledged the small girl's unexpected courage. Yujin summoned her full power, dark energy swirling violently. Then, "I will fight with all my might!" Engulfed by power, Yujin activated her transformation. "Copy, Lord, change!" Her aura flared, shaking the surrounding air. Watching calmly, Demon smiled slightly. "Yes, I'll give it my all," he whispered, intrigued by what followed. Yujin stood firm, dark aura swirling. "Me and my shape-shifting abilities," she declared, challenging she directly. She stood frozen, eyes wide. She sensed something terrifying emerging, completely unlike anything she'd faced before. A thick cloud of black smoke formed. From within, a powerful, monstrous figure slowly started taking shape. Manager Go observed nervously. "It's my first time seeing Yujin's shape-shifting skill. I wonder what it's like." Out of the swirling smoke, sharp claws and a terrifying silhouette emerged, radiating overwhelming hostile energy. Yujin fully transformed, her body now monstrous and deadly. Her crimson aura pulsed strongly with raw power. Demon calmly analyzed her transformation. "Your ability," he muttered, observing carefully, his mind already calculating possible outcomes. System windows appeared before him, listing her stats. Strength, 2,400. Speed, 2,500. Stamina, 3,000. Resistance, 3,500. HP, 2,400. Demon noted quickly, "The specs are nothing special, but shape-shifting? That's always an interesting skill to assess." He smirked slightly. "I've fought by channels 3 before, but abilities differ drastically between each individual user." Demon narrowed his eyes. "This is beyond expectations," he admitted. "I never thought she'd reach another form." She gasped, heart pounding. The atmosphere grew tense, her instincts screaming danger as the transformation completed. She spotted the horns immediately. "Look at those red horns on her head," she whispered in shock. Recognition struck her instantly. "Red Horn, the level 6 enemy from the Korean University Gate," she remembered clearly. Demon watched calmly. "An old nemesis has returned," he muttered, his expression unreadable, eyes locked on Yujin. Demon called out, "What will you do, subordinate?" She clenched her fist tightly, stepping forward without hesitation. Eugene smirked confidently. "What, are you so scared that you can't even move?" She mocked coldly. Eugene pressed further. "Is it because the enemy before you once wiped out everyone in front?" She clenched her fists tightly. "Scared?" "Not even a bit," she answered, her voice unwavering with confidence. A faint smile appeared on Shi's face. "I'm actually happy," she admitted, eyes shining with determination. Eugene clicked her tongue in annoyance. "Tisk!" she muttered, realizing Shi's courage wasn't something easily broken. She shouted boldly, "Are you ready to be humbled?" Her aura flared as power gathered rapidly. Eugene smirked. "Ha!" Her confidence remained, but her eyes tracked Shi's every movement with growing caution. With a sudden burst, she lunged forward. The ground cracked beneath her as raw speed took over. Focused and determined, she closed the distance, her form cutting through the air like a sharp blade. Outside, the entire facility trembled slightly from the shockwave. A fierce battle had clearly begun within its walls. The staff exchanged worried glances as distant tremors shook the room, signaling an intense battle nearby. One nervously asked, "Hey, are you sure this is okay? The building might actually collapse from this." Manager Go smirked confidently. "Don't worry, this building withstands even the strongest enemy attacks. You'll adjust soon." Inside the training hall, energy clashed fiercely. "This will happen quite frequently," Manager Go remarked with unsettling calm. Yujin struggled to understand. How can so much strength and speed come from such a small body? Yujin gathered her full power. But I can stop it, she shouted, energy swirling uncontrollably around her. She launched forward. I have the power of an enemy! Yujin roared, striking fiercely with deadly precision. She calmly analyzed the incoming attack, stepping aside gracefully. Her focus never wavered despite the dangerous assault. With perfect timing, she launched herself forward. Her counterattack was fast, precise, and completely unexpected by Yujin. A single golden strand of hair drifted gently through the air, marking the climax of their clash. Yujin attacked fiercely, her claws slashing through the air. She narrowly dodged, feeling the overwhelming attack pressure. A sharp counter landed. Kia! Yujin grunted, clearly caught off guard by Shi's precise, powerful retaliation. Without hesitation, she followed up with a devastating aerial strike, closing the distance in a single motion. From above, Yujin prepared to counter. Her transformed horns glinted dangerously as she aimed for Shi directly. A brilliant clash of red and blue energies erupted, sending shockwaves across the battlefield, shaking the entire arena. Yujin gathered a powerful crimson sphere, her energy swirling violently, preparing for a final, decisive strike. She launched upward, swiftly avoiding the destructive attack, her movements sharp and perfectly timed under extreme pressure. Kyuk! She winced briefly but pushed through, her determination stronger than the pain surging through her body. Yujin growled, "You better watch out," unleashing a ferocious wave of power directly toward Shi's exposed position. With a determined shout, "Ha!" she countered head-on, their energies colliding fiercely, sending shockwaves throughout the entire area. A guard's face froze in shock as he watched the battle unfold with rising panic and disbelief. She was flung backward by a massive red blast, her figure spinning uncontrollably through the air. The explosion struck violently, red energy erupting across the battlefield, engulfing everything in a chaotic shockwave. Manager Go stared wide-eyed, struggling to comprehend the power he just witnessed from such a young girl. Demon remained calm, eyes narrowed. A faint smirk formed. He knew this was far from over. Yujin panted heavily. "This is what you get for making a fool of me," she growled. Smoke filled the air. Eugene barely caught her breath, reminding herself she was still an A-class awakener. Suddenly she sensed movement. "Hey!" Yujin turned, confused, as a new presence rapidly closed the distance. She launched herself high, cutting through the sky effortlessly. Her next attack was already prepared mid-air. With precise speed, she descended directly toward Yujin, aiming a powerful kick toward her exposed head. She descended with force, sword in hand, aiming a finishing blow at the downed, transformed Yujin. With precise timing, she raised her massive blade high, prepared to strike with overwhelming power and accuracy. She's sharp gaze never left Yujin. Every movement was calculated, her stance unwavering and full of resolve. Yujin's eyes widened. She realized the tables had turned this time. She was the one cornered. Outside, Demon watched silently, arms crossed. His slight smirk revealed satisfaction at Shi's growth and unshaken confidence. Demon narrowed his eyes. Something clicked within him as he silently observed Shi's unwavering, determined stance. Suddenly, Demon shouted, "That's it!" His voice echoed across the battlefield, commanding attention from everyone present. The battle came to an abrupt halt. Yujin collapsed, unable to continue, her body completely exhausted. Demon crossed his arms calmly. "Enough," he said, satisfied with the results displayed before him. She turned toward him, smiling brightly. "Yes, master!" she replied proudly, standing victorious over the defeated Yujin. Breathing heavily, Yujin thought, "My strength, speed, and abilities were superior. Yet she still defeated me completely." She realized, I lost because she exploited my weaknesses. Her experience completely overwhelmed my raw power advantage. Determined, Yujin stood. "With that man, I can definitely become stronger," she resolved, confidence returning despite defeat. Before she could speak, Demon interrupted coldly, "I refuse." She smirked proudly beside him, enjoying the moment. "What? I haven't even said anything yet!" Yujin stammered, completely flustered by Demon's immediate and firm rejection. Demon spoke firmly, "All you have going for you is that interesting ability, nothing more right now." He continued, "You're like a newborn taking first steps. I don't feel like mentoring you yet." Demon smirked slightly. "But you'd make a good opponent for me. If you want a chance, ask." Yujin looked surprised. What? She stammered, not expecting him to offer such an opportunity after her defeat. Demon turned toward Manager Go. "You should have sensed it by now. Still nothing? It's already getting late." Manager Go's phone vibrated urgently. His expression turned serious as he answered the unexpected emergency call. A panicked voice screamed through the line. "Mr. Kang, we're in trouble! Japan! Something's happened in Osaka! Flames consume the city." The voice continued, trembling. "Osaka is gone!" A dark shadow loomed ominously overhead. The aircraft cut through clear skies, carrying powerful individuals toward an impending battlefield far ahead. Inside, the atmosphere remained calm. The master quietly observed as his companion eagerly unwrapped packaged food. Chewing thoughtfully, she asked, "Isn't it faster for master to fly alone?" He silently ignored her. Master replied, "When you leave home, do you run instead of taking a car?" She quietly understood. Despite approaching danger, the others seemed unnerved. One woman finally asked, "We're about to risk everything. Afraid?" The suited man stood confidently, addressing everyone. "Allow me to explain the current situation we're facing now." He showed them a tablet. An hour ago, a gate appeared in Osaka, Japan. Hostiles emerged immediately. Osaka's defenses collapsed quickly. Despite Japan's elite awakeners deploying, the unknown enemies completely overwhelmed their forces. All communication with deployed teams ceased. Authorities now presume that entire squad has been entirely annihilated. A woman smirked faintly. "Meanwhile," he continued, "the enemy emerged directly from this gate. Their strength is unprecedented." She trembled slightly, eyes wide. "It's a level 8, the strongest enemy ever faced," she whispered fearfully. Suddenly nauseous, she covered her mouth. The other girl calmly asked, "Motion sickness? You're pale and sweating." Flustered, she snapped back, "I don't have motion sickness!" Her voice cracked, betraying hidden nervousness. "Not scared?" she asked again. The calm girl smiled gently. "We're facing the strongest, but it's necessary." The blonde girl softened. "It's scary, but we'll save people. That makes everything worth it. Besides, don't worry." The dark-haired master adjusted his gloves calmly. "We have me," he muttered, eyes steady and unshaken. "A level 8. Is that finally the proper opponent?" His voice held boredom, craving a true challenge. He smirked slightly. "Hopefully this enemy won't disappoint like the previous weaklings," he thought without hesitation. The monstrous creature roared fiercely, its massive form rising. The city trembled under its terrifying presence. Their aircraft pierced through crimson skies, heading directly into the battlefield. The final confrontation was inevitable. The aircraft doors opened. A calm voice announced, arriving at the area of operations. "Prepare to descend." Without hesitation, the master stepped forward. "I'll go first," he declared, walking confidently into the open hatch. He leapt gracefully into the crimson sky, his cape trailing behind like a shadow above chaos. Winds howled around him. His expression remained calm, while monstrous roars echoed from the devastated city below. The blonde girl prepared to jump. "I'm going down too. Is your parachute ready?" she asked seriously. The older girl sighed. "You forgot the parachute belt again?" she teased. The younger girl blushed, embarrassed. "Well, I didn't," she mumbled nervously. The older girl smiled gently and began fastening the belt herself. "It's done. Relax a bit," she advised kindly. "You can't fight properly while being that tense." Yuen lowered her gaze. "Nuri is so determined, but I'm still trembling, unable even to tie this." Nuri reassured her softly. "I fought before." "You're strong, Yuen. You'll be fine when it matters." Nuri gave a small, warm smile, trying to hide her own nervousness before speaking confidently again. Yuen smirked playfully. "But of course, I'm stronger." Nuri chuckled. "Yes, senior, you're very strong." "All right," Nuri declared. "We'll jump together on the count of 3. Stay calm and focused." Both approached the hatch opening. Nuri inhaled deeply, preparing herself. 1, 2, she counted steadily. 3. Without hesitation, both girls leapt bravely into the raging sky, their descent marking the final battle. Both girls tumbled uncontrollably through the sky, screaming as the ground rushed closer at terrifying speed. The chaotic winds intensified. Despite the panic, they struggled to stabilize, desperately trying to regain balance mid-air. Meanwhile, their master glanced down with disinterest. He muttered, unimpressed by the unfolding chaos below. Spotting the monstrous enemy, he cracked a slight grin. "That's quite a big one. Finally interesting." Dark wings unfurled behind him, energy surged in his palm. "Well then," he whispered, descending toward battle. He tightened his grip, eyes burning with purpose. "I'll give him a greeting worthy of him." Without hesitation, he leapt from the platform, tearing through the air as crimson energy flared beneath him. Koharu froze amid the bodies, disbelief spreading. The A-class awakener hadn't expected this level of power. She turned slowly. Hundreds of red orbs pulsed ominously unnatural, massive. Her breath caught as the beast stirred. Realizing the hopelessness, she trembled. "Damn! Fuck this, I'm dead!" Her instinct screamed, "Escape or perish instantly." The ground shook as the monster rose, its many red eyes pulsing with threatening, eerie precision. A shockwave surged outward, cracking the air. Its limbs moved rapidly, faster than human eyes could track. Koharu gasped in horror, instinctively stepping back. Her body stiffened. This threat surpassed anything she'd ever faced. Frozen, she watched the force charge ahead, destroying everything. She knew running wouldn't guarantee survival now. From above, a voice shouted, "We're going to land! Jet blast!" Reinforcements had finally entered the battle, Descending swiftly, the blonde warrior angled her flight, locking onto the impact zone near the creature. Her boots struck ground, momentum carried forward, blades drawn. She wasted no time assessing the threat. She landed directly in front of Koharu, stepping between her and the monster without hesitation or fear. A massive shockwave erupted from the warrior's strike, pushing debris back and shielding Koharu from further danger. Koharu winced but looked up. The warrior extended a hand calmly and asked, "Are you okay?" The blonde warrior stood tall. "Reinforcements from Korea," she announced, her presence calming the shaken survivors. The monster responded violently, letting out a distorted cry as its twisted body reared and struck downward. He, cloaked in black wings, dodged swiftly. His expression sharpened as he examined the unnatural threat ahead. He observed the beast's form and muttered, "Wow, this dude's a real anomaly. He's so ugly." With a cautious stare, he added, "I've never seen anything like it," preparing for the next move. A strange data screen appeared mid-air, listing the monster's stats, its class, deity, its danger, extreme. Among the details, a line stood out: lost basic logic due to a contract with entity. Demon read the final line aloud: unique spec, deity. A grin formed as realization hit him. He chuckled slightly. "So you're an exiled god?" The air around him shifted with building tension. Dark wings unfurled fully. "Interesting," Demon said, eyes glowing red. "But I'm also an exiled god." Demon lunged forward, wings flaring outward. "Let's see," he muttered, launching himself toward the massive enemy. Sword raised, he stared ahead without hesitation. "How strong you are," he challenged, ready to strike hard. With wings spread wide, Demon dove sharply from above, aiming directly for the enemy's vulnerable core. The enemy's eyes followed his descent, pulsing with growing hostility as Demon picked up speed mid-air. Landing firmly, Demon twisted his body, shifting stance. His expression turned calm, completely focused on the target. Gathering momentum, he launched again, this time faster, fists clenched tight, aura surging with destructive power around him. The impact shattered the earth. Shockwaves exploded outward, engulfing buildings, while debris rained across the battlefield violently. The red-haired girl turned sharply at the warning. "Look out!" she cried, startled by incoming danger. A fiery explosion burst beside her. She stumbled. Thrown off balance by the heat and force, she hit the ground, narrowly dodging a monster's claw. The blonde warrior quickly stepped in between. Eyes wide, the girl gasped, What the hell is that?" As the monster surged forward again, they both stood still, watching the beast roar, its body thrashing violently in a wave of power. The blonde girl smiled confidently. "That's my master," she said. The redhead blinked, confused by the statement. What?" she asked. A soft glow shimmered. Translation magic clarified the term just in time. The redhead stared at Demon's figure mid-air. "That's an awakener? Not an enemy?" she asked cautiously. "Yes, my master is so cool, isn't he?" the blonde said proudly, hands on her hips. She approached warmly. "Don't worry, master will take care of it." The redhead snapped. "Get your hands off!" The blonde girl stepped forward firmly. "No offense, but your attitude's really starting to annoy me." "I don't need your help," the redhead snapped, shoving past her. "Get out of my way!" "You're being disrespectful to the people who just saved your life," the blonde said, unfazed by anger. "If you constantly whine, don't complain about those helping. You're no better than Nuri, another A-class. How dare you?" The redhead hissed, clenching her fists, eyes burning from pride and boiling frustration combined. The warrior narrowed her eyes. Something didn't feel right. A quiet shift spread through the battlefield. Both girls turned sharply as synchronized footsteps echoed. Their earlier argument was forgotten in growing unease. From the distance, shadowy legs emerged, many thick and heavy, crunching the ground with every monstrous step. The creature's eyes glowed again, brighter than before. Its movements were faster, more stable than previously. Dozens more legs pushed forward. Its massive body emerged, fully evolved. The spider had returned stronger than ever. The spider shrieked and charged. The girls readied themselves, blades drawn, standing together without hesitation. "You're right," the blonde said calmly. "I'd love to beat some sense into you, but—" She sighed, stepping forward. "We need to fight for our lives now," she finished, eyes narrowing sharply. The monster lunged again, its body glowing red. Its speed was even greater than before. High above, Demon watched silently, wings spread. The battle below had only just begun for them. The spider's eyes lit up. A massive web launched forward, aiming straight at Demon's mid-air form. Demon twisted mid-flight, narrowly avoiding entrapment. The web crackled behind him as tension surged through his muscles. He landed cleanly, cloak flowing. He muttered, unfazed, immediately analyzing the beast's movement and trajectory. Without delay, Demon shot forward again, his blade drawn, targeting the spider's exposed chest with precise force. The impact sent shockwaves across the battlefield. Dust erupted as debris scattered under the force of collision. Demon stood firm amid rubble. "You pesky bastard," he muttered, glaring at the monster's regenerating frame. He examined his swords calmly. "I'm afraid my swords can't deal any damage to you." Facing the towering beast, he admitted, "At this rate, I'll never be able to beat you." The creature shrieked again, its red eyes pulsing faster as it prepared another wave of assault. Demon smirked, eyes glowing red.
"Okay, I've decided," he said, a dangerous certainty in his voice.
Energy cracked around Demon's body as his transformation began. Bones shifted and dark power surged violently outward. "Be glad," he said, "for the first time in this world." His aura pulsed with dread. "I'm appearing in my true form." Muscles expanded, skin darkened. Demon's body fused multiple monstrous traits together. The spider hissed and reared back, instinctively recognizing the new form's power was far beyond normal. The blonde warrior braced herself. "That form, it's completely different," she muttered, readying for what came next. The spider froze. Its many eyes locked onto Demon's transformed body, sensing something far beyond comprehension. Demon pointed directly at the monster. "If you really are a god," he challenged, voice steady. "I challenge you to fight this demon and survive," he declared, muscles tensing with unshakable resolve. Without hesitation, Demon surged forward. Dust exploded underfoot as he launched toward the beast like a missile, wings fully spread. "Power overflowing," he whispered. "Demon wings, ready to finish what the monster started." Demon slammed into the ground like a meteor, unleashing shockwaves that fractured the surface beneath him. In a flash, he took flight again, hurtling toward the monster with unmatched speed and force. His attack struck the beast directly. The impact was brutal, sending it crashing backward in a heap. The spider shrieked, hundreds of red eyes blinking wildly as pain rippled through its monstrous form. Demon soared higher, wings glowing. With fists raised, he prepared to deliver the next crushing strike. Demon dropped like a hammer from above, his landing cracking the battlefield with devastating vertical force. He stood firm, eyes locked. "Let's see if you can endure my punches," he declared confidently. Fists flew, striking the monster repeatedly. Blows landed in rapid succession, forcing the creature to stagger back, even under pressure. The spider's body held, its tough exoskeleton barely cracked from Demon's furious onslaught. Demon smirked slightly. "I'll give it to you. Your resistance is impeccable," he admitted, voice edged with respect. Demon hovered midair, gaze locked. "But are those eyes strong enough?" he asked, voice calm and sharp. Lightning burst from his form as he launched downward, striking the ground with explosive, blinding intensity. The spider wailed as the energy wave slammed into it, its body trembling from the impact. The creature recoiled violently, staggering backward. Its massive limbs scraped the earth, flailing in pain and confusion. Nearby, the girl screamed, "Ka!" The shockwave reached them, forcing the blonde to shield the others fast. Demon soared above, wings tight and angled, his eyes locked on the beast's center below. With a burst, he descended again, his full weight behind the dive, ready to end it now. The spider shrieked again. Demon's strike hit hard, knocking the monster flat with a crashing quake. Hovering above the dust, Demon spoke coldly. "Everyone has a weakness," his voice echoing across the battlefield. "You could endure my punches," he added, arms raised again, "but not what's coming next." Demon lifted his foot high. The ground cracked from pressure alone before he brought it down. The force surged across the battlefield. Dust spiraled as Demon's overwhelming aura spread with oppressive density. With quiet certainty, he muttered, "That's right," fully embracing the power awakening within his transformed body. The spider's many eyes blinked rapidly. It stepped back, sensing something far worse had just emerged. Dark purple energy exploded from the ground. The beast screeched, caught in the core of the blast. As Demon raised his arms, dark energy burst upward. Tentacles wrapped around him, something ancient had awakened. A strange aura clouded the battlefield. "That's!" someone shouted, recognizing the form that should not exist. Dark energy surged above the battlefield, forming crimson orbs. The demon lord silently began gathering massive power. A blood-red shockwave burst outward. His roar pierced the air as the ground cracked under sheer pressure. He lowered his arms slowly. The enemy's cries faded into the thick smoke swirling across the field. His gaze narrowed. From the ashes, something shifted. A presence remained, resisting his magic's overwhelming grip. A beast leapt through the smoke, claws extended. The demon lord turned instantly, raising his armored arm. The demon lord released concentrated poison mist, covering the ground as enemy forces began collapsing in waves. Those who inhaled the mist screamed in agony. The poison dismantled internal organs and dissolved magical resistance. This attack, known as all-annihilating poison, was developed to erase entire armies without physical engagement. Meanwhile, a young knight infiltrated from behind. She descended rapidly, avoiding contact with the corrupted atmosphere. Her goal wasn't victory through strength. She aimed to trigger an ancient mechanism hidden beneath the battlefield. Chiharu issued the command. The processing team, a specialized response unit, was now officially being deployed. As instructed, the blonde warrior struck fiercely. Her attack was meant to distract and weaken the enemy. A sudden warning echoed through her earpiece. The situation escalated. Orders now required immediate evacuation from the zone. Realizing the danger, she turned to retreat. Her comrade shouted urgently, and they both began withdrawing quickly. From underground, several monstrous beings began rising. Poison and energy pulsed violently from beneath the fractured terrain. A corrupted creature emerged, its body pulsing with poison. The atmosphere thickened, making breathing nearly impossible. The red warrior recoiled from the spreading fog, realizing too late that lethal poison had already been released. She blamed her ally for not warning her. The blonde admitted she only recently learned about it. Far behind them, Chiharu panicked. The ground trembled violently as energy surged from beneath the damaged streets. Before she could react, the monster lashed out. Chiharu and the blonde were both struck with force. As poison engulfed the area, the red warrior shouted for survivors to flee or face instant death. The demon lord confirmed the poison's strength. Even his reinforced skin began to corrode under its touch. He recognized the source immediately. This was no ordinary toxin. It was the divine poison used by gods. Despite its threat, he remained unmoved. His body tensed, preparing to counter what would come next. A massive explosion erupted nearby. The shockwave tore through buildings, signaling a new phase of destruction. The demon lord raised his arm, channeling fire magic. He challenged the poison with dragon's breath. Flames erupted in a violent spiral. The heat expanded rapidly, incinerating everything in its immediate path. The corrupted being recoiled. Its protective orbs flickered as the fire approached, disrupting the poison's balance. He mocked its fear. Something once revered as divine was now overwhelmed by raw elemental force. Igniting his full power, he lunged through the inferno, declaring the enemy's resistance meaningless and unworthy. The demon lord's flames surged forward, intensifying with each step as he charged toward the enemy's core. Suddenly, a blinding purple energy formed ahead, an enormous barrier generated by the corrupted being to defend. The fire clashed violently with the barrier. The surrounding air warped as pressure between forces rapidly increased. The poison core absorbed energy, pulsing erratically. The shield started cracking under the immense force being applied. With one final strike, the demon lord broke through, sending shockwaves as both forces collided in explosion. Suddenly, multiple purple spears shot through the air and pierced the demon lord's body from above. He gritted his teeth, pain evident. His movement slowed as his body struggled to contain the impact. The blonde warrior looked up in horror. Her voice cracked as she realized he was critically wounded. Despite the damage, the demon lord remained upright. Energy pulsed from his wounds, threatening structural collapse. Dark energy spread across his chest. The spears dug deeper as cracks formed throughout his demonic armor. Poison surged through his body. The demon lord recognized it instantly. It was divine poison meant to kill. The blonde warrior confirmed it. Only a rare few across dimensions could survive such god-level toxic power. Despite its potency, the demon lord stood firm. His resistance to magical affliction exceeded ordinary limits entirely. Grinning, he declared immunity. His body absorbed the poison's force, rendering the opponent's strongest tactic ineffective. Unleashing retaliation, he launched green-charged projectiles. Each blast cut through air, targeting the creature's weakened defenses directly. The demon lord activated his core. His altered blood neutralized poison before it could spread internally. The corrupted entity prepared a counterattack. Its core pulsated as energy gathered into a dense cluster. He dashed forward at full speed, determined to end the fight before it escalated further. His wings flared wide. He spiraled through the air with explosive force, closing the distance instantly. He slammed down at full strength. The impact crushed the creature's outer shell, cracking its energy barrier. The blonde watched from behind as the demon lord prepared his final strike, unwavering and fully healed. He stepped forward calmly. With a firm tone, he declared the battle would now come to end. His energy surged. Crimson aura spiraled around him as his power reached peak destructive concentration for release. He unleashed everything at once. The impact landed precisely, erupting into a series of consecutive core detonations. Chiharu observed from afar. Her eyes widened as the entire battlefield trembled under the finishing blow's force. The monster's core began to collapse. The last wave of explosions erupted violently in every direction. Shattered fragments burst from the crater. Smoke and shockwaves spread, signaling the complete disintegration of its body. The demon lord stood in silence. His breathing slowed as the poisonous winds finally began to fade. He lowered his arms and turned away. His presence alone was enough to end the conflict. The crater continued to burn. Remnants of the divine poison hissed as they dissolved into scorched earth. From the fractured earth, a final core emerged, massive, glowing red, signaling one last desperate countermeasure. The demon lord stepped forward calmly. The core's energy flared, but he showed no hesitation or fear. He raised his hand. Power condensed into his palm as the core began to violently resonate. With a final statement, he launched downward. His attack struck directly at the nucleus, aiming for annihilation. The blast exploded outward. The remaining core structures shattered under pressure, ending the corrupted entity's existence completely. From the monster's remains, a large pink gem was extracted, still radiating faint traces of contained energy. The demon lord examined the crystal carefully. He sensed something abnormal that didn't match its external appearance. He narrowed his eyes. The gem's aura felt unnatural, layered with concealed power beyond typical resonance levels. He explained, magic gems were byproducts impurities formed through compression of energy in powerful beings after defeat. Such gems often formed from low-grade creatures. But something felt different. This crystal carried traits far too refined. The demon lord held the gem aloft. Its glow revealed something more than mere residual energy. He theorized the gem's form changed after exposure to divine power, possibly through contact with a god. He stared at it in silence. Whatever its nature, the situation had clearly become more dangerous. The blonde warrior noticed agents approaching. Confused, she questioned their movement and intent toward the battlefield. Chiharu responded coldly. If word spread that a demon lord had aided humans, consequences would follow. Chiharu's expression hardened. She issued the command without hesitation, prioritizing secrecy over loyalty or personal sentiment. The blonde warrior froze, betrayed. She realized the higher-ups had decided the demon lord couldn't be allowed alive. Chiharu explained coldly that revealing demon aid would weaken Japan's global authority and political influence immediately. Without emotion, she repeated her decision. The blonde warrior sensed hesitation but knew the order was real. The demon lord scoffed. He recalled how desperately they pleaded for survival just moments earlier in battle. His voice echoed with disdain. He challenged their betrayal, pointing out their hypocrisy after being saved completely. Surrounded, the situation shifted. Weapons were drawn. Everyone now viewed him as a liability to a race. Chiharu mocked their stance. She implied Japan's interests outweighed any foreign moral standards or battlefield alliances. The blonde warrior objected firmly. Their mission had always been to protect, not to destroy their allies. Chiharu dismissed her plea. She insisted that preserving national reputation justified turning against those who had helped. Without waiting for approval, she gave the order. Her agents charged forward to eliminate the demon lord. Reacting instantly, the demon lord dashed forward. He positioned himself between the attackers and the blonde warrior. Chiharu remained confident. She believed her team could eliminate the demon lord without needing additional support. The blonde girl gasped. She realized the situation was spiraling far beyond what she could control alone. Suddenly, the demon lord descended like a missile, crashing into the ground between both opposing forces. His impact created a crater. Shockwaves knocked back nearby attackers before they could even draw their weapons. The agents panicked. One shouted in disbelief at the overwhelming force he displayed with a single strike. A sudden force knocked weapons from the agents' hands. Their surprise left them completely exposed and disoriented. Chiharu's expression twisted in shock. Something unexpected had just shifted control of the entire situation in seconds. A tall man with long black hair stepped forward. His calm presence silenced the battlefield instantly. He glanced at Chiharu and the others. He addressed them with quiet authority and no visible hesitation. Knowing time was limited, he declared his intent to resolve the conflict swiftly with no further debate. Chiharu tried to maintain control, suggesting they could have kept the illusion of cooperation slightly longer. The demon lord stood beside the new ally. The situation had clearly shifted against the government agents. He explained bluntly they saved lives, but pride now drove those same people to eliminate them out of shame. With rising fury, the black-haired man accused them of betrayal. His protectiveness toward his side was clear. His voice boomed as pressure surged. All agents instinctively recoiled, weapons trembling under the weight of his command. The agents froze in place. An overwhelming pressure fell upon them. Unlike anything they had encountered before, though he spoke calmly, his words carried authority. Several agents found themselves paralyzed by the sheer force. Dark energy intensified. One agent trembled, imagining a massive unseen hand squeezing the life from his lungs. Even seasoned fighters grew hesitant. One urged Chiharu to reconsider. This target surpassed their assigned operational clearance. Still, Chiharu refused retreat. She believed backup forces could turn the tide, regardless of the enemy's class. The black-haired man calmly noted that even Japan's elite awakeners wouldn't arrive fast enough to intervene. Chiharu panicked. Realizing their time was short, she ordered everyone to keep attacking to stall him. He mocked their desperation. If they truly sought battle, he was more than prepared to respond completely. With dark power surging, he warned them those unwilling to surrender would be erased from existence without hesitation. The blonde girl looked on nervously. She called out to him, Sensing he was about to escalate, the blonde girl stepped forward. Despite her fear, she knew she had to intervene without hesitation. She addressed Chiharu directly, even in betrayal. Her belief in protecting others hadn't been shaken or broken. With unwavering eyes, she offered terms. She challenged anyone, Chiharu or others, to a fair one-on-one fight. If victorious, she demanded freedom for their side and pledged to formally report Chiharu's actions afterward. If she lost, she promised silence. No retribution. She would settle everything herself without her master's help. The demon lord hesitated, concerned that allowing the fight might escalate and cause unnecessary injury to others. He questioned whether such people deserved protection at all, knowing they were willing to betray their saviors. The blonde gently called out. Her presence reminded him of the principles she stood for without hesitation. Amused by her conviction, he acknowledged her courage and agreed to let her fight without interference. He vowed neutrality. As Demon King, he promised not to intervene regardless of who won the duel. Chiharu panicked as the enemy approached. Raiden calmly analyzed the situation, seeing a fleeting strategic chance. He explained the diversion plan to Chiharu. Confidently stepping forward, Raiden instructed her to escape safely alone. Drawing his sword with determination, Raiden prepared for battle. His pride refused to lose against the Korean Awakener. The opponent arrived swiftly, golden-haired and armored. Her grip tightened on her blade, eyes locked on Raiden's stance. Above them, a third force silently observed. Their masked expression hinted at deeper motives behind this orchestrated encounter. Raiden stood firm as the blonde warrior approached, sword raised. The duel was moments from beginning. Chiharu watched anxiously from the distance, unable to interfere. The pressure from the girl's aura was overwhelming. A man with commanding presence emerged from the shadows, observing quietly. He demanded results from his subordinates' training. The blonde girl lunged forward with explosive force, her sword slicing the air as dust scattered upward. Her body blurred with speed. Raiden narrowed his eyes, preparing for impact as the ground trembled beneath them. Their swords clashed violently, sparks flying with each strike. Neither fighter gave ground during the opening exchange. The girl pressed forward, launching relentless attacks. Raiden barely deflected as debris scattered across the broken street. Her eyes locked onto him, analyzing his footwork. She adjusted her rhythm, aiming for his weak side. Raiden noticed her intent too late. His stance faltered slightly, and a sharp flash crossed his vision. Blood burst from his mouth as the blade pierced his shoulder. His body dropped, overwhelmed by pain. The masked overseer silently judged the outcome, unmoved. Her gaze confirmed the duel's result without emotion. Nuri stood tall beside Raiden's fallen form. Her name was declared victory officially belonged to her. Chiharu trembled in disbelief. Despite her doubts, Nuri had overpowered Raiden with a single, decisive blow. The commander finally spoke, addressing Nuri. He acknowledged her strength and declared their past debts now settled. With a rare smile, he praised her progress. Honoring his word, he prepared to fulfill his promise. Chiharu trembled with rage. Her pride shattered, she clenched her fists, unwilling to accept the outcome. She screamed accusations, branding the Korean Awakeners as dishonorable, her voice echoing through the destroyed urban ruins. Consumed by fury, she rallied her subordinates. She vowed the Koreans would not leave alive today. With a wave of her hand, she gave the command. The crowd rushed forward to attack. The red demoness flinched as a scream pierced the air. Chaos had begun, beyond her control now. The commander placed his hand gently on Nuri's head, signaling her role in battle was finished. She looked up at him with concern. Despite winning, something far greater was now being unleashed. His voice was calm, but crimson energy erupted. He admitted he rarely draws his sword for insects. Dark power spiraled outward, devouring the air. Screams erupted as the shockwave shredded through the charging enemies. The attackers froze, eyes wide with horror. They hadn't expected such overwhelming force to be used instantly. Chiharu stared in disbelief. The overwhelming aura surged toward her. Her instincts screamed too late for escape. The blast engulfed everything. Screams and shadows vanished instantly as the red wave obliterated her entire force. The explosion spread across the battlefield, leveling buildings. Smoke and flame consumed everything in its expanding radius. From within the smoke, the commander raised his arm. Concentrating energy into a red orb of power, he released it silently. The orb pulsed, drawing blood and shadows into a vortex around his body. Nori stood behind him, shielding her eyes. The attack ended as quickly as it had begun. He exhaled and scanned the area. With calm certainty, he declared the situation neutralized, all threats gone. With the threat eliminated, the commander turned away. He signaled Nori to follow and leave immediately. She hesitated, calling to him. Her expression showed admiration mixed with confusion, unsure what to feel next. The demoness watched him walk. Her thoughts spiraled. How could one man possess power that vast alone? She remained silent, awed, That man single-handedly destroyed a city-scale threat without support or visible effort. News spread quickly. The Osaka Level 8 enemy incident ended with total destruction and massive structural collapse. News of the Osaka incident spread globally. Broadcast displayed images of the crater left by the explosion. Citizens across Tokyo watched solemnly. The media warned that recovery from such destruction would take decades. Japan's prime minister bowed in apology. He announced their formal request for aid from South Korea's awakeners. At the Korean Awakened Authority, an elder approached the team with urgent news and a sealed message. All eyes shifted toward him as he revealed the sender, Mr. Seotae, a Japanese official. A glowing ice spear floated inside the case. Magical symbols shimmered, radiating cold across the room. The girls leaned closer, eyes wide. The elder explained it was one of Japan's national magical treasures. Everyone admired the craftsmanship. The commander admitted it was impressive, though he didn't find it useful personally. He grabbed the spear calmly and placed it aside, joking that it could serve as a refrigerator. Turning serious, he requested Japan send something practical next time, like resources or gear his team could use. The commander sensed a presence approaching. He glanced toward the sea, instinctively aware something was heading in. The elder confirmed that something unidentified was coming toward the island. The commander immediately moved to investigate calmly. They stood at the dock, watching a boat slice through the water toward the private island. A cheerful man on the boat admired the estate, clearly impressed by the size and location. He shouted excitedly, guessing the commander was an elite S-class awakener to own such a place. A group of men arrived nervously. Their leader apologized profusely, clearly intimidated by the overwhelming presence. The elder explained they represented the Japan Awakened Association. Their visit was previously requested but improperly handled. He clarified that Seotae had no appointment. The elder offered to remove them immediately in apology. The commander declined politely. Then, without hesitation, he stated the intruder didn't deserve another chance to leave. His tone turned cold. Challenging Kim Sung-chul without strength was an unforgivable act in his eyes. The commander issued a quiet order to prepare. His tone alone made Nori instantly alert and ready. Inside the house, lights dimmed. Every hallway fell silent as they prepared for an unwanted, hostile guest. The intruders entered cautiously. Their nerves cracked. This didn't feel like an ordinary S-class awakener's residence anymore. Dark energy surged from the commander. His smirk deepened. Their fear confirmed how unprepared they truly were. One stammered a response. The commander's voice sliced through the tension, demanding why they dared to visit him. With a calm smile, the commander welcomed them again and asked directly about their visit's purpose. The guests were seated across from him. Nuri and the others stood quietly, monitoring every movement. An attendant served drinks. The commander accepted iced chocolate without emotion, his demeanor calm but highly alert. One guest trembled while sipping. He sensed it too. This wasn't a normal S-class aura surrounding them. The commander's tone turned sharp. He demanded they speak quickly, making clear his patience was running out. The guild representative began sweating. The pressure from the commander's gaze made it hard to breathe. He dropped to his knees, lowering his head completely. Desperation drove him beyond formalities or pride. Begging aloud, he offered the commander a position in the Ares Guild, hoping to recruit him immediately. The commander responded without hesitation. His voice was calm, but final. He had no interest at all. Elsewhere, the Awakeners Association headquarters stood tall, unaware of the rejection just delivered to Japan's strongest guild. A man in a business suit scanned the report, confused why such a minor guild mattered. He dismissed it casually, uninterested in low-ranked Awakeners or C-class organizations, barely making regional headlines. Another officer corrected him immediately. His voice turned serious, insisting that this guild was worth watching closely. He emphasized one reason above all: because the most dangerous man alive had now joined their ranks. Images confirmed it. The commander stood behind two subordinates. The officer's confidence was instantly replaced with fear. The officer leaned forward, urging his team to gather more intelligence. Something felt off about everything. His colleague summarized past findings. The Ares Guild leader, Kim Yoon-suk, had long targeted S-class status. They'd monitored his actions carefully. However, his unpredictable nature made tracking every movement nearly impossible so far. New intel arrived. Yoon-suk and his team were heading west. The news triggered instant concern across the table. They confirmed it. Kim Yoon-suk was heading toward the island, directly targeting the man living there. The officer grabbed his head in frustration. He couldn't believe they were heading straight for that monster. He ordered his team to uncover Kim Yoon-suk's true intentions and gather intel from every conversation. His subordinate confirmed the task. The officer sighed, admitting he had no idea how to counter him. And the idea that a C-class guild was engaging a threat like that made no sense. He feared the outcome. Whether successful or not, the Awakener Association would ultimately pay the price. He reached for his phone and dialed. The situation had become too risky to handle alone. The voice answered casually, an old contact. surprised by the sudden call after so much silence. Without delay, he explained the terms. He would reconsider the past offer if help was provided. On the other end, silence held for a moment. Then came agreement, if that's your offer. The agent collapsed from unseen force, nerves shattered, muscles limp. He had underestimated the one above all. On the throne, the demon lord sat unmoved, watching the body fall without a trace of concern. His eyes scanned the night sky briefly, calculating consequences, before returning to the defeated traitor below. The man's body twitched involuntarily. Years of loyalty meant nothing now. He'd failed the mission fatally, deeming the man irrelevant. The demon lord mentally erased his name, just another piece discarded without hesitation. Beneath his boot, broken pebbles scattered, a reminder of how easily power destroyed those beneath him. He mocked the man's arrogance, drinking calmly, aware the intruder dared enter without permission or preparation. Uninterested in further conflict, the demon lord dismissed him coldly, commanding him to leave without resistance, but the fallen man clenched his fists, desperation rising. He couldn't return without gaining something valuable. He remembered the aura the demon lord radiated, immense, overwhelming. That day, fear had etched itself deep. He rose in protest, voice shaking, years of effort invalidated by a single judgment of worthlessness. Desperation filled his eyes as he defended their past missions, claiming their struggles weren't meaningless sacrifices. Beside him, a blonde agent stepped forward, suggesting alternative roles just to remain part of operations. Others supported her plea, willing to accept even low-tier responsibilities, just to avoid being discarded completely. Kneeling, the man begged with trembling arms, pride lost but still pleading for a chance to serve. Amused by the outburst, the demon lord chuckled softly, finding humor in their desperate determination to survive. He turned slowly, pretending not to hear, letting silence test their resolve before granting any attention. Finally, he acknowledged their plea, curious now, as their persistence hinted at something beyond mere survival instinct. With a shift in tone, he offered one condition: loyalty without question, absolute obedience without delay. The agent dropped to the ground trembling, but nodded, instantly willing to surrender everything for another chance. With a faint smirk, the demon lord tested their loyalty, demanding the destruction of an entire organization. His sudden command shocked them, their confidence shaking as the target was far beyond their capability. Still reeling, they could only react with disbelief, struggling to process the scale of his demand. A high-speed vessel launched across the ocean, signaling the start of an operation no one expected. Despite doubts, one agent declared boldly they had no better option, and failure awaited either path forward. Their ship raced across the sea, ordered to erase evidence and prepare for a detailed operation. One agent spoke with enthusiasm, hopeful for riches if they succeeded in the seemingly impossible mission. Meanwhile, in private, an aide questioned the master's decision, uncertain why such a reckless command was given. The master casually admitted its difficulty, acknowledging the mission's scale and impossibility without hesitation or regret. A strategist detailed their enemy, the Awakeners Association, backed by 3 elite guilds and countless powerful individuals. His smirk deepened as she questioned the logic, knowing his motives weren't based on fairness. He explained plainly, if they could do the impossible, they were worth some limited usefulness. Still, he refused to fully trust them. They weren't part of his true plan or goals. Their only role was to create momentum, a rallying reason to confront the Awakener Society head-on. His eyes sharpened. He hadn't forgotten. Everything was still connected to the vengeance he carefully planned. Surrounded by swirling energy, he reaffirmed his vow to destroy everything tied to his long-held grudge. He declared the agents' mission as fuel, using their struggle as justification for his coming retaliation. His resolve unsettled his followers. They sensed his revenge wasn't just personal, it was deeply calculated. Even the calmest among them admitted whoever his targets were, they wouldn't die easily or quietly. Elsewhere, under surveillance, Mr. Q was approached, his movements monitored as suspicion toward him steadily increased. The Valkyrie guild leader, Sion, confronted him, her tone calm but her presence filled the room. Mr. Q tried to deflect suspicion, feigning confusion as pressure mounted around his previously hidden actions. Sion shut down the act. Instantly, her team had already traced and documented everything he tried hiding. She accused him of betrayal, contacting powerful individuals outside the guilds without formal approval or oversight. His visit to the S-Class Awakener, Demon Lord, had exposed a risky attempt to shift alliances. Mr. Kim flinched as the tension built. His actions had drawn attention he hadn't expected this soon. Sion spoke softly but firmly, assuring him they wouldn't resort to violence without cause or necessity. She reminded him of Valkyrie Guild's role, servants of national stability, not underground enforcers or reckless aggressors. Still, she pressed harder, demanding to know what deal he struck with the S-Class Awakener. She voiced her concern aloud, the worst scenario being an alliance powerful enough to disrupt guild balance. Sion warned him if he disrupted the balance, every guild and agency would turn against him. Silence followed. Mr. Kim stared blankly, struggling to decide whether to lie, deflect, or reveal everything. He parted his lips slowly, considering the consequences of honesty, then chose to speak against his instinct. The atmosphere tensed around the room as other agents leaned in, curious about what he'd reveal. Elsewhere, a young girl's training was interrupted. She sensed an unnatural surge echoing from far away. While training, Yulin received news Demon Lord had moved without warning, triggering unexpected political and military consequences. Suspicious, she demanded answers over the phone, wondering how they dared exclude her from the chain. She noticed the silence, interpreting it as betrayal left out and abandoned during critical developments again. The contact on the line panicked, trying to calm her down, but she sensed deeper problems. Suddenly, another team member burst in breathless, announcing a direct call from the National Intelligence Service just arrived. Demon Lord checked the message carefully. The sender shocked him. It was from the Ares Guild leader. Outside, a group of agents arrived with urgency. Their sudden presence drew attention from nearby onlookers. One of the agents stepped forward, questioning a man directly, confirming his identity as Ares Guild's head. The group paused in confusion. None of them recognized the name or who they were facing. Elsewhere, Sion quietly observed, sipping her drink. She already suspected the situation was about to escalate. Sion's eyes widened sharply. Something was wrong. Her instincts screamed just moments before the impact occurred. A violent explosion erupted near the building, engulfing everything in fire and debris within seconds. Elsewhere, a man watched calmly, accusing a traitor of betrayal despite previously offering alliance and support. His expression turned mocking, claiming loyalty meant nothing, and survival always came at the expense of others. News spread quickly. Images of the explosion circulated online, identifying the attackers as members of Red Dragon. Demon Lord stared at the screen. Reading the report, his smirk widened as chaos unfolded perfectly. A private jet soared through the sky, carrying urgent passengers responding to the unrest unfolding below. Agents disembarked rapidly. The news reached them midair. Demon Lord's move had already triggered multiple violent incidents. Confused, a top officer demanded clarification. The words Demon Lord and strike changed his expression instantly. Reports confirmed Kim Yoon-sok had been attacked in broad daylight, causing shock throughout the guild network. Sion stepped through the ruins, confirming her presence prevented total disaster, but the conflict had officially begun. An agent stepped forward with concern. Information had surfaced that changed their understanding of the situation entirely. The shocking update revealed Demon Lord had already assumed full control over the once independent Ares Guild. The commander was stunned, struggling to understand when the takeover had happened right under their watch. Another officer confirmed it had been verified just recently, discovered only minutes earlier by trusted intelligence sources. They added that Demon Lord blamed the Awakened Association for targeting his subordinates, igniting his hostile response. The agents stammered in disbelief. Demon Lord's strategy had caught even their highest ranks completely off guard. Realization hit another member. This wasn't coincidence. It had all been calculated long before any violence began. She explained clearly. Demon Lord planned everything. The attack served only to justify his claim over the guild. Now, he was using that pretense to escalate matters and retaliate against those behind his pain. While en route, a companion asked if their next stop was the National Intelligence Service headquarters. Demon Lord gave his next directive, shifting his focus from Ares to the Valkyrie Guild headquarters. Sion acknowledged the decision with a nod, hiding her uncertainty as new tensions silently built around them. Beside her, the younger agent hesitated. Troubled by the sudden shift and its unpredictable consequences, she finally spoke up, reluctantly starting to voice concerns about the risk they were diving into. Before she could finish, Demon Lord interrupted confidently. He already understood her hesitation and what she feared most. She pleaded for restraint, hoping Demon Lord wouldn't pursue absolute destruction out of anger and grief alone. Demon Lord agreed, acknowledging not everyone needed to die. He valued strategy over blind revenge or wasted effort. He revealed his broader goal: to take control of the Awakened Association and use its structure. To him, power had value when preserved. Tools weren't discarded when they could still serve purpose. He aimed to assess the Valkyrie Guild's worth, deciding whether to spare them before initiating full conflict. Demon Lord reaffirmed his intent. He only spared groups or individuals who served a strategic purpose to him. Their car arrived at the towering Valkyrie Guild headquarters, casting long shadows across the pavement below. Inside, agents scrambled, preparing to respond. An unexpected visit from an S-Class Awakener stirred immediate alarm. Sion entered with authority, ordering her people to stay calm and maintain control of the situation. She knew if Demon Lord approached directly, it meant diplomacy had failed, or worse, he'd already chosen force. As they entered, Demon Lord remained calm. No matter the outcome, he would maintain control throughout. Sion prepared herself mentally. She would do anything to avoid conflict, even at significant personal sacrifice. Demon Lord's voice echoed across the hall as he addressed her directly, confirming her identity without hesitation. She stood tall, introducing herself confidently as Park Sion, Valkyrie Guild's leader. Data glowing in sync, Demon Lord assessed her silently. Her strength surprised him. For a C rank, her energy was far from average. Sion began her explanation calmly, clarifying that her guild had no role in harming Yunsuk. She admitted confronting him only because he investigated the top guilds behind the Awakened Association's control. Their confrontation was internal politics. Nothing was meant to challenge Demon Lord's authority or interfere with his goals. But when she mentioned the Elsam Guild, Demon Lord's mood shifted. His expression grew colder with suspicion. He glared sharply, aura rising, accusing her of lying. He believed no one was ignorant of them. Sion insisted again her guild didn't collaborate with Kim Moonsok or plan any move against Demon Lord. She explained his investigation was self-initiated and had nothing to do with their guild's directives. Demon Lord wasn't convinced. His voice was cold as he demanded a clearer, more detailed explanation immediately. Sion clarified Valkyrie Guild wasn't even present during the incident involving Ilsem and bore no direct blame. Another agent revealed the real culprit, Chairman Cheon Yulum, who accepted bribes to bury the entire scandal. Sion admitted her guild lacked power to confront Red Dragon directly and chose survival over resistance. She explained that exposing the Ilsem Guild would shatter public trust and fracture the association permanently. The younger agent added that without unity, defending South Korea from future enemies would become impossible. Seun defended her decision, saying they chose the lesser evil for national security, not to support Ilsem. But Demon Lord challenged her integrity, pointing out her silence ultimately made her complicit in everything that happened. Demon Lord's energy surged violently, his patience shattered. Her justifications were meaningless in the face of betrayal. He declared her silence had cost innocent lives, and someone must now bear that consequence directly. Seun braced herself. She knew arguing wouldn't work. He was preparing to eliminate everyone without hesitation. Her subordinates reacted instantly, launching a barrier in desperation to stop the incoming wave of destruction. But Demon Lord's attack broke through. The shockwave struck her directly, sending her crashing backward with a scream. A Valkyrie agent charged forward, enraged, his weapon raised high as he aimed straight for Demon Lord. Before he could strike, the blonde agent intercepted him mid-air, slamming him hard into the floor. Another guild member lunged in response, but she countered with a swift blow, knocking him unconscious instantly. As flames erupted across the room, a furious scream followed a desperate attempt to protect their leader. Demon Lord restrained an attacker with crimson chains, mocking her resistance and warning her not to move again. Demon Lord lifted Sion by the neck, his expression void of mercy as her body dangled helplessly. He acknowledged her intentions but made it clear this war wasn't political, it was deeply personal. To him, this was vengeance, punishment for pain inflicted on his family, not strategy or diplomacy. Sion gasped for breath, pleading for her life, willing to accept death to save her people. Barely able to speak, she begged him to spare the others, asking for mercy on their behalf. Then, Demon Lord paused in silence, his grip loosening slightly as Sion's pleas echoed in his thoughts. Nearby, the blonde warrior watched vigilantly, ready to act if Demon Lord's rage turned toward the others again. Demon Lord's eyes glowed red with fury, conflicted between his vengeance and the restraint her sacrifice might demand. The Red Dragon Guild headquarters towered over the street, hiding secrets and dangerous plans inside its walls. Two guild members walked briskly across the carpet, whispering urgent updates they feared to share openly. Hearing the news, the man in the suit shouted angrily, unable to hide his frustration anymore. His hand trembled while lifting the phone, heart racing as he prepared to call their leader. He swallowed hard and muttered nervously, confused by the message blinking on the small black screen. He called the boss immediately, reporting the target's unexpected actions with a trembling, uncertain voice. The boss's order was clear: handle the target swiftly, no loose ends or public attention. Despite careful planning, the target noticed and escalated the situation, forcing them into urgent decisions. Now the target's vehicle sped directly toward the chairman's location, creating a dangerous and unpredictable threat. Panicking, he barked orders through the phone, desperate to stop the target before reaching the chairman. He shouted furiously into the phone, demanding immediate protection before the target reached his hiding place. He insisted only their men could stop the advancing enemy, voice cracking under pressure and growing fear. The voice on the line sounded calm, explaining reinforcements were already moving to intercept the threat. Still, the man mocked him. Disappointed to hear Chairman Cheon trembling like a helpless, scared child, anger boiled over as Cheon realized payment would be withheld, his authority slipping through shaking hands. Cheon stomped forward, voice thundering as he ordered every subordinate to gather without any delay. He screamed for them to prepare for combat, panic mixing with a desperate, reckless determination inside. His assistant bowed slightly, promising to deliver the command and organize the Red Dragon Guild quickly. Qian clenched his fists, convinced their combined strength could overwhelm even the most powerful awakened opponent. With a sneer, he mocked the target's arrogance, certain no S-class alone could defeat them. The Demon Lord calmly announced his plan to end all resistance today, eyes fixed ahead firmly. His ally shifted nervously beside him, realizing he truly intended to crush every remaining opponent completely. She gasped as invisible pressure struck her chest, making it impossible to draw a steady breath. The Demon Lord promised to spare her life, provided she obeyed and abandoned any thoughts of defiance. Standing tall, he ordered her to follow him now, his authority impossible for her to challenge. The Demon Lord explained she must testify about every crime she witnessed while serving Chairman Qian. He spoke of the corruption infecting the Awakened Association and all the hidden atrocities Qian committed. Although he could destroy everything alone, he needed her testimony to justify punishing them without question. He declared the guilty would be punished, while he gathered loyal followers willing to stand beside him. His gaze sharpened as he told her to watch quietly and see everything he planned to do. She turned pale as the car slowed, realizing they were approaching a large force blocking the road. The Demon Lord calmly informed Mr. Taehyung it was time to stop and confront them directly. Outside, hundreds of guild members stood ready, weapons drawn, determined to defend their leader at any cost. Their vehicle rolled to a stop, facing the crowd that filled the entire wide city street. The Demon Lord warned his companions to stay back and avoid interfering as he stepped forward alone. The Demon Lord advanced alone, dark power rising around him as he prepared to crush all opposition. One man pointed and shouted, identifying the Demon Lord as their target in a shaky, frightened voice. With desperation, the guild members screamed orders to attack together, hoping numbers would overwhelm his terrifying strength. Their charge ended in chaos as the Demon Lord exploded through their ranks, bodies falling like stones. Watching the carnage on screen, a man cried for help, admitting they could never stop him. The man in the brown jacket watched the screen silently, studying the Demon Lord's destructive advance carefully. He muttered that Taehyung seemed less impressive than expected, his reputation perhaps exaggerated by frightened rumors. Frowning, he wondered if Taehyung was holding back, not displaying his true abilities during the battle. Chairman Qian forced a weak smile, relieved someone believed the threat could still be handled successfully. Standing, Qian begged the man to stop the Demon Lord before everything collapsed beyond any recovery. The man smirked and demanded an additional reward before agreeing to confront the Demon Lord directly. Qian nodded quickly as he accepted the offer, desperate for any chance to stop the slaughter. Meanwhile, the Demon Lord tossed aside another attacker, barely sparing a glance at the collapsing, broken body. He calmly asked if the small obstacles were finally cleared away, voice echoing across the ruined street. A woman stared in disbelief, realizing one man alone had crushed the Red Dragon Guild's full force. The Demon Lord turned his attention toward Taehyung, knowing this opponent would not fall as easily. The blonde woman watched quietly, observing that despite severe injuries, none of the guild soldiers had died. She realized the Demon Lord had granted them mercy, though his strength could have ended everyone quickly. He stepped forward again, boots scraping over broken pavement, his gaze locked on the approaching new threat. Without looking back, he ordered the women to stay behind, far from the coming confrontation's danger. A massive explosion burst outward, flames engulfing the street as heat blasted in every direction violently. The blonde woman gasped in shock as blue energy shields barely protected them from the sudden blast. The Demon Lord emerged unscathed from the flames, his calm expression unchanged by the fierce attack. He walked forward, unimpressed that enemies still dared to speak, as if he posed no threat. With quiet certainty, he observed that simply being an S-class never guaranteed true power or respect. Dylan stepped forward confidently, smiling as he addressed the Demon Lord, without a trace of fear. He mocked the arrogance of thinking anyone could stand alone and claim to be truly unmatched. Dylan declared he was also an S-class, power recognized by every major faction across the continent. He introduced himself calmly, stating his name and affiliation as Dylan Lane from the powerful group Another. With a cold voice, Dylan promised the Demon Lord that his death had finally come at last. The three women stared at Dylan Lane, their expressions tight as his reputation finally registered with them. Dylan repeated calmly that their deaths were certain now, his stare locked onto the silent Demon Lord. The Demon Lord studied him without speaking, measuring this new opponent's strength with a cold, steady gaze. One woman gasped aloud, shocked to hear Dylan belong to Another, a faction feared across nations. Eyes wide, she struggled to speak, realizing this battle could decide everything if Dylan fought seriously now. The two women exchanged uneasy glances, both aware how dangerous Another truly was among awakened factions. One woman whispered that another's members were famous for combining their strength and crushing any enemies encountered. Unlike most awakened who protected others, another often used their terrifying power for personal gain and ambition. Standing with a calm expression, Dylan embodied another's reputation as a ruthless collective feared across the continent. A man recalled asking Director Chun about them, but Chun insisted he had never heard anything credible. Dylan stood calmly among the rubble, completely unbothered by the chaos spreading through the entire street. Chairman Cheon glared, muttering it was unbelievable that Director Chun had allied himself with another secretly. Cheon burst into laughter, shouting that anyone targeting him would now pay the ultimate price immediately. Dylan tilted his head slightly, puzzled by Cheon's sudden confidence and the triumphant tone in his voice. The Demon Lord watched in silence, waiting to see what desperate move Cheon planned to attempt next. Dylan shouted, reminding everyone he was an S rank, confident that title alone would command respect. The Demon Lord stared at him evenly, replying without emotion that he already knew this insignificant fact. He asked so what, unimpressed, as detailed information about Dylan's abilities silently appeared before his eyes. Examining the stats, he concluded none of Dylan's skills were worth any real concern or preparation. Dark energy gathered as he stepped forward, declaring Dylan would never be the one to end him. Dylan looked over his shoulder, feeling the tension rising as the Demon Lord prepared to attack. He politely urged Director Chun to retreat to safety, warning the coming clash would be extremely dangerous. Chun snapped angrily, refusing to leave and insisting he would witness the Demon Lord's defeat himself. Voice cold, Dylan told Chun to leave immediately if he valued his life at all anymore. Chun flinched, finally understanding Dylan's seriousness as dread tightened around his heart like an iron band. Director Chun stumbled back, sensing the overwhelming energy gathering around Dylan as the air began vibrating sharply. Dylan's voice turned cold as he declared the Demon Lord had reached the end of his time. The Demon Lord raised a hand calmly, ordering everyone behind him to retreat and avoid the blast. Dylan smirked, promising to see if that composure would survive the full force of his magic. With a roar, Dylan unleashed Inferno, a pillar of searing pink flames tearing skyward in blinding fury. A monstrous face of fire roared within Dylan's spell, the flames swirling like a living creature. The Demon Lord studied it calmly, impressed Dylan could summon such a powerful incantation in seconds. He noted casting an S-rank spell instantly was impossible for normal mages relying on common techniques. Realization dawned that Dylan's strength came from something far beyond average awakened skills or basic training alone. Nearby, the women shielded their faces, crying out as the heat rolled over them in waves. The flames spread across the cracked ground, consuming everything and painting the ruins a glowing pink. One woman trembled, thinking this was the most intense heat she had ever experienced in battle. She worried silently whether even the Demon Lord could endure such fire despite being an S rank. Dylan clenched his jaw, convinced the Demon Lord would never be defeated by something this simple. He vowed not to underestimate an S-rank opponent, pouring more energy into his roaring magical inferno. Dylan unleashed the full force of his magic. A towering storm of blazing pink destruction erupted forward. The Demon Lord stood calmly in the center of the flames, unshaken by the overwhelming heat. The energy crashed around him, splitting the pavement and sending shockwaves that rattled every nearby building. Dylan grimaced, straining to maintain control over the enormous spell as sweat rolled down his face. The blast roared even louder, filling the air with a blinding brilliance impossible for anyone to ignore. Far away, the remaining guild members retreated nervously, unable to withstand the sheer pressure of Dylan's power. Dylan smirked and apologized to Director Chun, pretending to regret the destruction he was about to cause. He laughed coldly, calling it a free demolition of the Red Dragon Guild headquarters and reputation. Magic symbols blazed brighter as Dylan poured every ounce of strength into the enormous spell's final release. A massive column of pink energy erupted skyward, tearing through the buildings in a deafening explosion. The swirling pillar of pink flames climbed higher, scorching the sky and swallowing the towering guild building whole. Dylan laughed triumphantly, declaring no S-rank or awakened being could endure the full force unleashed now. Chun stared at the burning ruin, torn between regret for his headquarters and hope the fight ended. He swallowed hard, thinking if this attack finished the Demon Lord, then the sacrifice was worth everything. Watching from afar, one woman whispered in shock that these flames could even melt solid concrete. One woman admitted she had never seen any awakened unleash magic this powerful in a real battle. She feared that no matter how strong Master Te was, he couldn't escape without serious injury. Another woman ordered everyone nearby to evacuate survivors and get ready to manage the spreading destruction soon. She warned the next clash would be devastating, insisting only they had strength to contain the aftermath. With calm confidence, she assured them Master Te wouldn't be defeated by a single overwhelming firestorm. The swirling pink inferno began collapsing inward, as if something immense pushed back from its very center. A shockwave burst through the flames, splitting the magic apart and leaving cracks in the burning air. Dylan's eyes widened in disbelief, unable to understand how anyone could resist an attack of that magnitude. The Demon Lord calmly analyzed the spell's strength, admitting it was impressive compared to most common mages. Bathed in dark power, he declared such magic remained basic and posed no real threat to him. The Demon Lord smiled coldly, stepping through the last flickers of flame without slowing his advance. Dylan staggered back, his confidence cracking as he realized nothing he'd done had even slowed him. Dark energy exploded outward as the Demon Lord raised one hand, preparing to end the struggle. Watching from a distance, Chun felt a cold fear spreading through his chest at that sight. With a roar, the Demon Lord surged forward, dark power swirling around him in unstoppable waves. Chun froze in place, his body trembling, as he watched the Demon Lord charging straight toward him. A towering column of red energy erupted, swallowing everything it touched and shaking the ground violently apart. The flames intensified, blasting debris in all directions as the Demon Lord's power continued to surge. Nothing survived the center of the storm, the raging darkness consuming walls, weapons, and every last hope. The explosion reached its peak, a roaring vortex of destruction tearing the battlefield into broken ruins. A sudden explosion shattered the city skyline, sending shockwaves and smoke spiraling into the red sky. Two operatives emerged onto the rooftop, scanning the distant blast site with tense, determined expressions together. The man observed the smoke carefully and spoke quietly, saying they had arrived at the scene late. The woman nodded firmly, understanding that reaching the explosion now would not change the outcome anymore. She explained Taehyung would finish soon, and they must prepare to secure everything after him. He watched the spreading fire carefully, admitting to himself that nothing else could be done now. His jaw tightened as the flames rose higher, reflecting determination and the bitterness of a failed plan. Across the burning street, a dark figure stepped forward, boots cracking debris under the relentless orange glow. The figure declared the long-awaited revenge had finally reached its conclusion, voice steady and completely certain. He lifted his weapon, asking if he should relieve the tension by destroying everything that remained. He charged forward, gripping the burning weapon tightly, determined to break the Demon Lord's relentless defense completely. Clashing against the Demon Lord, he shouted that his strength specialized in pure destructive physical attacks alone. The Demon Lord stood calm in the fire, unfazed by each furious blow raining upon him. He calmly explained that such overwhelming skill was never something the young attacker could ever truly master. With a single sweeping motion, flames erupted upward, hurling the young fighter backward into the smoking air. The Demon Lord swung his blazing weapon downward, flames striking the ground and splitting the street apart. A massive explosion tore through concrete and steel, sending debris flying in all directions around them. The young man steadied himself, declaring confidently that even the Demon Lord would feel that attack's power. He panted heavily, eyes locked on the smoke, hoping victory might finally be within his reach. From the smoke, the Demon Lord spoke calmly, acknowledging his opponent's surprising speed in learning and adapting quickly. The Demon Lord gripped his sword tightly, staring forward, asking coldly if that was everything delivered. His opponent froze, stunned that all his fierce attacks failed to leave even a scratch anywhere visible. The young man questioned how a supposed physical type could so easily withstand powerful magical strikes. The Demon Lord stepped forward, calmly promising an answer, declaring his opponent's magic was basic and weak. The young man gasped, overwhelmed by the truth, realizing his strongest efforts meant nothing against this power. Dylan's breathing grew ragged, sweat sliding down his cheek as he struggled to steady his thoughts. The Demon Lord watched, thinking this was where humans revealed their deep difference compared to true demons. He recalled demon strength came not from gifts or bodies, but an endless, unyielding fighting instinct within. Demons never lost spirit, even facing stronger enemies, while most humans surrendered quickly before overwhelming power. Observing Dylan trembling, he concluded calmly that this human had finally reached the absolute limit of endurance. Dylan clenched his burning fists, admitting he had underestimated the Demon Lord's true strength and nature completely. He screamed that finally, he would strike using every ounce of power, ready to die fighting. The Demon Lord laughed loudly, praising Dylan's spirit and urging him to keep attacking without any hesitation. With renewed rage, Dylan roared, summoning a massive firewall between them, determined to create an opening. The Demon Lord stepped forward calmly, unbothered by the flames, his eyes locked firmly on Dylan's resolve. The Demon Lord stood unflinching as flames roared around him, the air shaking from power released. He glanced down, observing calmly how the fire's intensity grew beyond what Dylan had shown before. Indeed, he thought, this new flame felt much stronger and more focused than the earlier attacks. Dylan clenched his fists, yelling for every part of himself to tighten and hold absolute focus. The Demon Lord's expression shifted slightly as the inferno pressed closer, finally demanding his true attention. The Demon Lord tilted his head slightly, studying Dylan's rising power with a curious, measured expression. Dylan raised his arm high, shouting that it still wasn't enough, summoning an attack called Volcano. Molten fire erupted across the cracked street, waves of heat smashing into buildings around the burning battlefield. The Demon Lord's cloak whipped in the heat as he watched the flames spiral around his feet. With a fierce cry, Dylan unleashed another spell, hurling the flame wedge straight toward his enemy's chest. The Demon Lord braced himself as Dylan's flame wedge struck, flames curling around his black cloak instantly. Heat exploded outward in all directions, swallowing everything in a burning storm of violent energy. The impact tore apart the pavement, leaving a smoking crater where the Demon Lord had been standing. Nearby observers watched cautiously, unsure if Dylan's attack had finally succeeded in ending the impossible battle today. Dylan glared into the smoke, declaring confidently that even a 6th-rank enemy would fall to this power. The last sparks of Dylan's attack flickered, flames wrapping around the dark figure standing unbroken again. Dylan's eyes widened in disbelief, lips parting as he struggled to accept what he was witnessing now. A black-gloved hand slowly lifted through the smoke, embers sliding off as if they meant nothing. Boots crushed cracked pavement as the Demon Lord stepped forward, unscathed. Red eyes locked on Dylan silently. His figure emerged from the haze completely, calm and relentless, proving no attack had left a mark. Dylan shouted desperately, voice cracking as he demanded to know why the Demon Lord still stood. With a furious scream, he gathered every last fragment of strength, summoning a towering column of fire. The Demon Lord raised his arm calmly, unshaken by the flames surging wildly around his steady form. He stepped forward without hesitation, lifting Dylan effortlessly by the neck, eyes fixed coldly on his face. A dark red arc of energy formed in the air, pulsing with quiet, unstoppable destructive power. A crimson blade of energy cut across the battlefield, striking Dylan's chest before he could react. Blood burst from his body as he staggered, shock spreading across his face in slow horror. His mouth opened soundlessly, eyes wide as he tried to understand the pain splitting him apart. The Demon Lord stepped closer, grabbing Dylan's limp form and hurling him down onto the shattered ground. Standing above him, the Demon Lord watched silently as blood pooled around the defeated human's motionless body. The Demon Lord drove his heel into Dylan's chest, pressing him deeper into the shattered, broken ground. Energy surged around them as the Demon Lord stood above, silent and unshaken by the scene. Dylan coughed weakly, blood dripping from his lips while his body struggled to draw another breath. The Demon Lord watched calmly, observing the final moments of resistance flickering in his opponent's dimming eyes. With no urgency, he stepped back, letting the silence settle over the ruined battlefield without regret. Dylan gasped and hiccuped weakly, blood on his chin, eyes staring blankly into the smoky sky. The Demon Lord tilted his head, mocking him with a question about losing both his useless arms. He urged Dylan to replace them with magic, insisting there was still energy left to keep fighting. Leaning closer, the Demon Lord demanded more effort, reminding Dylan he was counted among the strongest mages alive. Dylan's voice trembled as he tried to speak, confusion flickering across the Demon Lord's expectant face. The Demon Lord studied Dylan quietly, remarking that it seemed he had truly reached his final limit. He smiled slightly, admitting the battle had been entertaining enough to briefly hold his full attention today. Lifting one hand, he promised a fitting reward execution by magic for providing such a pleasant diversion. Dylan panicked, begging frantically for mercy, offering wealth, loyalty, and any secrets he could possibly share. Nearby, 2 observers watched closely. Realizing the Demon Lord might soon learn about their hidden organization as well, the Demon Lord looked down coldly, voice low as he prepared to deliver the final judgment. He declared any advanced power, when perfected, became indistinguishable from magic itself in every possible way. Dylan's eyes widened in terror, realizing too late what was about to happen to his body. A single word explode ripped through the air as Dylan vanished in a spray of blood and smoke. Nearby, a woman gasped in shock, while the Demon Lord calmly lowered his hand without emotion. A single heartbeat echoed through the ruins as the Demon Lord stood over Dylan's destroyed remains silently. 2 operatives watched the aftermath carefully, understanding how serious the threat had been from the start. They agreed no ordinary enemy could have caused damage so extensive, even against skilled defenders working together. The woman pointed out the collapsed buildings, explaining it would take days to recover any useful records. Another survivor lowered his weapon, relieved, admitting he was simply glad everything had finally ended that day. A blonde woman stepped forward, calling out to team leader Sarian while the others turned to listen. She bowed respectfully, apologizing on behalf of her master for causing such a catastrophic situation here today. The woman insisted they didn't intend to avoid responsibility, fully prepared to accept whatever consequences would follow. Sarian sighed, explaining they'd have understood even if Seoul itself had been destroyed during the terrible battle. One operative clarified that the Demon Lord had faced an S-rank awakener, making the chaos unavoidable. One agent frowned, asking why anyone would risk provoking Taeyong or targeting the Red Dragon Guild directly. The woman answered firmly that all S-rank awakeners were controlled. No country had sent this fighter. Another operative explained the mysterious attacker came from an unknown place only referred to as another. She insisted meeting with national security leaders was necessary because the threat had grown far beyond control. Everyone stood in tense silence, realizing this was now a matter of South Korea's national security itself. Inside a tall government building, senior officials gathered urgently to discuss the growing crisis threatening national security. One man gasped in shock, repeating the name another as disbelief spread across his strained expression. A woman nodded gravely, saying she believed the director already knew about the organization hidden for years. He exhaled heavily, admitting the danger was too serious now to keep any secrets about another anymore. Touching his tablet, he explained only top officials and the president were aware of another's existence. Officials sat tensely as one explained another had attacked many regions, especially unstable parts of the world. He continued grimly that wherever another appeared, catastrophic damage always followed, leaving cities and lives in ruins. Another official described them as terrorists made up of rogue awakeners, claiming to save people from enemies. The Demon Lord scoffed, calling it foolish to pretend secrecy could hide their growing power any longer. A woman admitted the battle involving Shanran Chun and Taehyung meant they could no longer stay hidden. A woman straightened her posture and declared firmly that it was time to take decisive action. One official confirmed the Awakeners Association would be dissolved, along with those who secretly shielded Shanran Chun's crimes. He explained Taehyung had been dispatched to suppress another and had fought to stop their plans. The Demon Lord listened silently as they revealed the National Security Planning Agency would replace the old association. Far away, hidden figures watched holographic screens, their outlines glowing as they observed the unfolding changes carefully. A woman's image flickered on the hologram, her voice reporting Dylan's defeat to the Hidden Council. Several masked figures listened as she confirmed Dylan's death, her tone calm and without any visible regret. One figure chuckled darkly, mentioning a bet placed on when Dylan would finally meet his end. The woman repeated Dylan's name clearly, leaving no doubt that he was no longer a threat. A man nodded slowly, admitting it seemed the report was true and Dylan had truly been killed. One masked figure instructed the others to monitor South Korea closely and report any sudden developments immediately. He added they should prepare to suppress information and control any reactions from foreign powers watching carefully. Another figure agreed, confirming they would maintain total surveillance and ensure nothing threatened their organization's secret interests. The woman acknowledged the command calmly, promising she would finish her current task without hesitation or complaint. Far away, a man sighed, standing before a swirling portal, agreeing to depart and handle matters personally. He stood before the swirling portal, promising to meet the one responsible for ending Dylan's life. A swirling dark gate opened in the sky, scattering leaves while everyone watched with rising unease. Several men in black suits gathered near the park, gripping weapons as their eyes fixed on danger. He sat calmly on a bench, observing the gate and wondering what foolish thoughts filled their heads. Two powerful beings, one armored in red scales, emerged beside a woman in uniform, tension in their gaze. A woman in black reminded them to stay alert but warned not to become stiff with fear. The red-scaled warrior stepped forward, her claws ready as her sharp eyes scanned for approaching threats. The blonde woman spoke calmly, reminding everyone that Eugene could defeat most enemies without any help. She smiled confidently, suggesting they decide on a team name while walking toward the swirling dark gate. Someone proposed calling themselves the non-expert team Invincible, believing it fit because their master never lost battles. The Red Warrior frowned, unimpressed, and asked what better name he thought would suit their powerful group. Everyone stood together in silence, waiting for the leader's decision, while tension slowly filled the air. He looked up calmly and declared their team should be called something that no one could challenge. His voice was steady as he said the name would be untouchable, beyond any enemy's reach. The blonde woman's eyes brightened, happily agreeing that the name sounded strong and perfect for their group. Facing them, he spoke clearly and named them Master Team Untouchable, sealing their bond and shared mission. He folded his arms, considering the question carefully, then simply hummed while everyone waited for approval. Suddenly, a deep vibration shook the air, and everyone turned in shock toward the growing dark portal. The swirling gate pulsed with purple light, sending waves of energy across the silent and tense group. Her eyes widened as she remembered a similar event that happened before. Inside the large department store, the others looked serious, knowing this gate could bring danger even greater than their last encounter. The leader stepped forward, eyes steady, as the strange portal's energy spread across the empty field. A woman watched nervously, realizing something dangerous was coming that none of them were prepared for. The swirling portal expanded rapidly, and a voice shouted for everyone to retreat before disaster struck hard. People scrambled back, recognizing instantly this threat was beyond their power and far too strong to face. Calmly, the leader stood firm while his team regrouped, waiting for him to make the next move. A huge clawed creature burst through the swirling portal, its roar shaking the ground beneath everyone's feet. It landed heavily, screaming as its red eyes locked onto the only person standing before it. The man studied it calmly, wondering if this beast was the most dangerous foe he had faced. Bright panels of information appeared, listing the monster's rank, abilities, and an ominous warning about extreme danger. The woman scanned her device quickly, her voice tense as she confirmed it was a level 7 threat. The red-scaled warrior glared at the massive beast, realizing its strength might match their own power. The monster roared, fire surrounding it, while the man stood firm, ready to face the danger. The woman analyzed its energy and form, concluding both were identical, like two versions of one. They debated calling it Red Dragon 2, arguing over whether the code name sounded strange or acceptable. Confidently, she smiled, trusting their master to defeat it without letting the beast leave a single mark. The group watched closely, eager to see exactly how their master would fight the towering red beast. The monster lunged forward with claws extended, determined to crush the man standing calmly before its rage. Its massive arm smashed down, tearing through the ground with a thunderous impact that shook nearby buildings. Everyone gasped in horror as dust rose, fear tightening their chests as they called out for him. The creature's glowing eyes narrowed, surprised that any opponent could remain unhurt after such a powerful strike. The monster snarled furiously, its claws scraping the ground as it prepared for another brutal attack. He observed carefully, wondering if the creature had been revived by some hidden resurrection spell or curse. A glowing screen displayed information, but the many unknown details only raised more questions in his mind. He adjusted his gloves calmly, deciding to postpone answers because the enemy still needed to be stopped. With a quick step forward, he launched himself directly at the beast, ready to strike it down. He leapt high into the air, shouting he would cut off the monster's head again. The beast's red eyes glowed with rage as it tracked his movements, refusing to back down. Raising his arm, he commanded the creature to lower its eyes before he struck with force. He spun downward, gathering momentum, determined to end this battle with a single decisive blow. Landing firmly on the ground, he faced the towering beast, ready for whatever would happen next. The massive creature stood tall, glaring down as the man charged forward without any sign of fear. With quick steps, he dodged the beast's claws and closed the distance in one breath. He grabbed the monster's thick arm tightly, ready to strike it with all of his focused power. Energy burst through his hand as he lifted the creature, spinning it high over his head. The beast crashed heavily onto the ground, stunned by the sudden attack that left it momentarily helpless. The creature's narrow eyes glimmered with rage as it struggled to rise and continue the fight. Standing calmly above it, the man swung his blade, cutting deep into the monster's thick red scales. The team watched in disbelief, amazed that he could overpower such a huge creature so effortlessly alone. He spoke clearly, suggesting that the name magicians would suit them well for future missions together. She stared at him in surprise, her expression softening as she considered his unexpected name choice. The others exchanged glances, surprised he still had time to think about naming the team properly. While flames gathered inside the monster's mouth, he calmly repeated that magicians would be a nice name. Without hesitation, he leapt forward, driving his blade straight into the creature's burning jaws without slowing down. Landing firmly, he declared it settled and told them to write the name down as official. A man watched with awe, realizing this moment marked the start of their dangerous shared adventure together. He raised his arm and announced that team training would be postponed due to the urgent situation. The woman explained each person's role, giving instructions to handle bodies and report to the national agency. Everyone hurried to follow orders as the master waited calmly, ready to lead the next operation.
Lightning split the sky, shaking the battlefield. Warriors trembled. Molten ground cracked open, glowing fiercely. The group watched cautiously, debating possibilities. If the strongest enemy caused this, everything has shifted. One woman spoke firmly, recalling past events. We've seen even higher-ranked threats emerge without warning. Their leader stepped forward, cutting discussions short. Enough chatter, prepare yourselves. The real battle begins now. The leader studied the battlefield carefully, weighing possibilities as his companions silently awaited his judgment. The woman lifted her gaze, expression steady, Together they overlooked the shattered land, glowing fractures spreading endlessly. She steadied herself, determination surfacing as she resolved to face whatever challenge now stood before them. The leader's focus remained sharp, demanding certainty. The group's resolve hardened, prepared for the difficult path ahead. The woman's resolve hardened, her stance unshakable, as she accepted the immense responsibility before her. The group tightened formation, silent agreement uniting them as they prepared to carry out crucial order. They stepped into designated positions, their movements sharp and disciplined, ready to face the overwhelming threat. Energy gathered swiftly as she raised her hands, summoning strength long restrained, now unleashed without hesitation. A surge of brilliant power erupted, rumbling through the battlefield. The cloaked leader raised his hand. Their combined power surged outward violently, shocking the other. The enemy's presence was shattered instantly, obliterated under the devastating release that tore through the battlefield. The leader's expression remained cold, hands still raised. Witnesses looked on in awe, silence heavy. The woman's arms trembled as power surged through her, sensing something far greater awakening beyond control. The cloaked leader revealed a sinister smile, eyes gleaming as his grand design began unfolding at last. Energy spiraled violently, tearing through the sky, and, under the bright daylight, a silent city stood unaware of the catastrophe drawing near. Suddenly, footsteps echoed through ruined streets as survivors rushed, urgency driving them toward unknown looming danger. A squad of soldiers sprinted through ruined streets, reporting grimly that an estimated 9th-rank enemy approached. Explosions erupted violently around them, fire scattering debris, cutting off their path and throwing men aside. One fighter staggered up from rubble, bloodied yet defiant. Another soldier froze, wide-eyed, as an ominous presence thickened the air. Before them a swirling vortex of crimson energy expanded. The soldier froze, eyes widening in shock, blood sprayed violently, his body collapsing lifelessly. Meanwhile, far away, sunlight broke over an airport as planes carried vital passengers to uncertain destinations. Inside, discussions grew tense. Awakened beings of global significance were already preparing to convene without delay. Speculation rose. Our rank awakeners, possibly 3 or more, might soon assemble, altering balance of power forever. A servant bowed respectfully, informing his master of their arrival as the plane prepared for landing. The man rose calmly, dark eyes sharp. His presence commanded silence, acknowledged as unmatched strength, surpassing all others without question or doubt. Speculation spread. Could one man truly balance inevitable tensions between awakened beings from clashing global powers? He adjusted his jacket, stepping forward with unshakable composure. The group moved confidently through the terminal, their leader at the front, radiating authority and control. His sharp smile hinted at anticipation, as if upcoming challenges promised more intrigue than simple danger. Behind him, loyal subordinates exchanged glances, reassured by his presence despite rumors of terrifying ranked enemy. Their arrival drew attention, airport halls filled with whispers as figures from many nations observed closely. Outside, a black car waited, an attendant already standing ready, prepared to escort them with respect. Inside the moving car, escorts remained composed, while preparing to deliver critical intelligence regarding enemy activity. Information revealed disturbing details. An S-rank awakener had emerged, capable of immense havoc across entire regions. The vehicles sped through city streets, urgency rising as the situation's severity became increasingly impossible to ignore. Reports suggested the enemy lingered unpredictably, alternating destruction with long intervals of unsettling rest and silence. Current estimates indicated 30 S-rank awakeners and 12 9th-rank awakeners already active within global operations. Inside the car, numbers were tallied. 5 S-rank awakeners now aligned under a single banner. The black vehicle sped across a secured route, urgency clear as global powers mobilized their strongest assets. One subordinate calculated quickly, realizing foreign nations had dispatched S-rank awakeners specifically for reinforcement and balance. The driver smirked knowingly, aware that true power often depended less on numbers than coordinated strength. The group exited together, footsteps steady. Lower-ranked awakeners delegated logistics and minor operations to support mission. Crowds gathered as arriving awakeners drew attention, their presence signaling the seriousness of the looming threat. The Korean representative stepped forward confidently, his composure marking him as a natural leader among elite. Elsewhere, discussions confirmed Korea had dispatched its own S-rank awakeners, raising the global total even higher. Numbers grew clear. 6 S-ranks now assembled, including 2 from Korea, strengthening the alliance's growing might. Yet shadows stirred. China's most feared S-rank awakener moved silently, plotting while others prepared for confrontation. Concerns grew among commanders, some questioning whether assembling numerous S-rank awakeners was truly necessary. One veteran dismissed doubts coldly, insisting that even such overwhelming numbers might still prove insufficient. Confusion spread among the newer recruits, unsettled by implications of threats far beyond their understanding. Shock followed when an artifact was revealed, an arm bound by a legendary restraining bracelet. The bracelet of Sleipnir, capable of halting decay, offered only limited resistance against worsening conditions. His back bore severe burns, injuries inflicted merely from residual energy unleashed during the monstrous rampage. Dark energy loomed nearby, overwhelming and untouchable, proving he had never even faced the creature directly. The gathered crowd stared in awe as the master's disciples showcased their strength, filling the arena. Two observers whispered cautiously, recognizing one figure as an awakened fighter from abroad, notorious for difficult battles. Nearby, another pair of onlookers identified a powerful summoner whose creatures rivaled even elite awakened beings. Attention shifted as a tall man entered, known for merciless victories, unmatched tactics, and spirit-like precision. Whispers spread quickly, confusion rising, as unfamiliar faces appeared, their presence stirring uncertainty and curious anticipation. Footsteps echoed sharply as the man entered, his presence immediately drawing the attention of surrounding fighters. Observers studied him carefully, their curiosity piqued by the aura of strength radiating from his calm movements. Details emerged about his identity: an assassin of outer-world origin, trained through countless battles, an awakened Set's rank. His abilities listed shadow manipulation, lethal precision, unmatched agility, aura destruction, and ruthless execution through instant kills. The atmosphere thickened as his piercing gaze unsettled everyone, demanding recognition, leaving challengers uncertain of their strength. Tension rose as a companion pulled someone aside, preventing unnecessary involvement with the mysterious new figure. Murmurs spread through the gathered fighters, rumors claiming another powerful S-rank awakened had arrived from China. The commotion drew attention, and Gaolin stepped forward, his sharp tone demanding an immediate explanation. His glare locked onto the newcomer, testing his resolve, while the silent crowd anticipated a potential clash. Suspicion hardened as Gaolin confronted him directly, questioning his origin and strength with calculated confidence. The man's steady steps carried him forward. Gaolin dismissed the encounter coldly, claiming busyness, leaving with words laced in quiet arrogance and superiority. He belittled Korean awakeners, declaring their abilities insufficient, warning others not to waste energy on weak distractions. His voice carried further, emphasizing true battles required clashing against monsters, not indulging in meaningless rivalries here. Watching his departure, others whispered, though one girl scoffed. The crowded hallway buzzed with energy. His focus narrowed as a familiar presence approached, its aura carrying weight and authority impossible to ignore. Among the gathered students, Park Gocha appeared, radiating confidence, his reputation as Benjamin Group's heir undeniable. The crowd whispered of his unmatched skills, boasting victories, saint-like influence, and an awakening rare among peers. Yet beneath admiration, unease stirred. The mysterious system's note marked him strangely servant of something still unknown. Rumors swirled about his mysterious lineage, intertwining noble bloodlines, unrivaled power, and whispers of hidden destiny. Curiosity tightened around him as suspicion grew, making others question what truth lay beneath his composed exterior. Approaching calmly, the stranger sought direct acknowledgement, his presence commanding attention among peers unaccustomed to such intensity. The atmosphere thickened, admiration mixed uneasily with uncertainty, while status and fame failed to mask deeper motives. He assessed them coldly, noting their abilities, silently weighing strengths and flaws, his judgment sharper than theirs. A faint smirk curved his lips, suspicion rising as he carefully examined the man's outward composure. The nobleman flinched slightly, unsettled by the piercing stare. Masking unease with laughter, he dismissed the notion, projecting confidence to hide his doubts from onlookers nearby. Explanations followed swiftly, grounding abilities in logic, proclaiming healing existed only among awakened individuals, excluding magical influence. Yet doubt lingered, his expression darkening, silently challenging their certainty with knowledge deeper than anyone dared imagine. Feigning composure, he excused himself casually, retreating as tension crackled subtly beneath his forced departure. Observers noticed the abrupt change, questioning silently why confidence vanished so quickly, leaving uncertainty heavy in air. The dark-haired dismissed concerns coldly, commanding loyalty with ease, his servant bowing obediently without hesitation. Whispers spread quickly, anticipation rising, Eyes shifted toward newcomers entering confidently. His confident smile deepened. Opponents gathered together, determination firm, readying themselves as orders echoed. The cityscape loomed shattered, devastation painting the horizon. Whispers carried through the crowd, curiosity stirring, acknowledging his looming presence too dangerous to simply overlook. Speculation grew louder, some suspected deliberate provocation, drawing rivals together, forcing confrontation to measure true potential. Allies gathered close, aligning with Anderson's group, intent on reinforcing his position during the looming conflict. Strategic whispers spread, speculation rising, whether uniting forces would secure victory or merely waste their strength. Some doubted the wisdom of such alliances, questioning potential risks should overwhelming force collapse too quickly. Rumors circulated of powerful champions abroad, nations gambling resources, betting heavily on survival in brutal contests. Amid tense anticipation, he absorbed everything silently, sharp eyes glinting with calculated awareness none could challenge. He halted abruptly, footsteps firm. The loyal servant spoke eagerly, boasting of rank and assignments, her confidence masking the danger ahead. His cold eyes narrowed, commanding immediate withdrawal, his tone final, offering no room for hesitation. Recognition sparked his instincts, warned clearly of imminent devastation, power radiating violently beyond ordinary human comprehension. The ground quaked, thunder roared, destructive energy surged outward, confirming his suspicion of overwhelming force unleashed. Chaos erupted instantly, screams filled the air as terrified figures stumbled back, shocked by the disturbance. Confusion spread quickly, eyes widened in horror, an unnatural crimson energy spiraling violently into existence nearby. The crowd held its breath, tension unbearable. From the swirling void emerged a cursed blade, radiating dark malice, embodying destruction's essence without restraint. Gripping the weapon firmly, he declared dominance coldly, the cursed power bending instantly to his command. From the sky descended a monstrous eye. Panic erupted instantly, civilians stumbling away as the dark-haired warrior lunged forward. His cursed blade gleamed blood-red, cutting through chaos with precision. The enormous monster loomed above the ruined city. Panic spread quickly through the streets as young awakeners sprinted forward. Amid the chaos, a lone warrior stepped forth. Weaker fighters fell, retreating as ordered, their fear evident while the beast's roar shook surrounding buildings. Among the regrouping awakeners, tense voices rose, questioning whether the chosen warrior could truly withstand this threat. The commander's stern expression revealed unease, his instincts warning him this battle carried devastating consequences. Among the scattered soldiers, whispers spread as they assessed the colossal enemy's unnatural strength. Its immense eye pulsed with sinister energy, dwarfing lesser monsters, radiating a presence like a nightmare. Panic erupted as awakeners admitted their weakness, knowing their blades and powers were useless against it. Despite uncertainty, leaders debated grimly, questioning whether reinforcements or sacrifice could delay inevitable destruction. Tension grew as commanders argued, unsure if reinforcements could arrive before the monster destroyed everything. The atmosphere shifted suddenly, soldiers turned, sensing an overwhelming presence approaching swiftly through the battlefield. The warrior appeared, crimson blade blazing, charging forward with unmatched speed, locking onto the towering creature. Steel clashed against monstrous flesh. Witnesses gasped in disbelief, realizing the true demon lord had returned. The commander raised his weapon high, rallying hesitant awakeners as he shouted for an all-out charge. Responding to the call, soldiers advanced in unison, their footsteps thundering across the fractured battlefield streets. Among the chaos, leaders recognized this clash would decide survival, testing their combined will and strength. The colossal eye pulsed ominously, recognizing worthy challengers, unleashing deeper power, forcing awakeners into desperate resistance. Amid the growing storm, the demon lord's calm figure stood apart, preparing to reveal unmatched dominance. The monstrous eye unleashed whipping tendrils, striking wildly, forcing the awakened warrior to brace himself firmly. Unyielding, he tightened his grip, channeling dark power through crimson steel, cutting through the beast's assault. Energy surged violently as his aura expanded, overwhelming nearby soldiers, who staggered beneath its crushing presence. With a decisive swing, the warrior cleaved the beast's limb. Amid terrified silence, he stood unfazed, eyes steady. Black blood rained across cracked streets, as the beast's severed limb thrashed violently. The demon lord advanced steadily, crimson blade dripped. From the shadows new abominations emerged, snarling beasts with glowing eyes. Without hesitation, he crouched low, muscles coiled. Channeling destructive force, he lunged forward, his swing cleaving air and earth, obliterating enemies in waves. The Demon Lord cut through advancing beasts, his movements sharp. Meanwhile, commanders unleashed radiant techniques, rallying fighters to hold their fragile line against overwhelming monsters. Despite determination, the weaker awakeners faltered, their formations breaking beneath unrelenting waves of grotesque abominations. From above, the colossalized tendrils descended violently, striking with crushing force to scatter defenders. Unmoved, the Demon Lord stood alone at the center, crimson aura flaring. Dark energy surged as the Demon Lord released power. Nearby awakeners struggled valiantly, blades flashing, though their strength paled compared to the overwhelming monstrous tide. Despite exhaustion, younger fighters pressed forward, refusing retreat, their courage surprising seasoned commanders observing the chaos. One commander's eyes widened, realizing these recruits displayed resilience rarely seen, holding the line with determination. Yet above them, the colossal eye still lingered, its oppressive presence reminding all of imminent destruction. Commanders resolved to protect the younger fighters, ensuring their survival despite overwhelming enemy forces advancing. Orders rang out, directing specialized units to reinforce weak points and stabilize crumbling defensive lines. A determined warrior sprinted forward, massive weapon in hand. Yet the colossalized minions pressed harder, swarming defenders, their claws tearing through weakened human ranks. Screams echoed across shattered streets, as soldiers fell, crimson blood staining rubble beneath monstrous relentless advance. Veterans recognized certain fighters growing reckless, their desperation leading to dangerous mistakes against relentless creatures. Anderson's heavy strikes tore through beasts, but his stamina dwindled rapidly under constant unyielding pressure. Commanders exchanged worried glances, realizing exhaustion was spreading quickly through their already fragile ranks. Despite his resilience, the Demon Lord observed silently, knowing human defenders were beginning to collapse. If unchecked, their reckless efforts would lead to complete annihilation. Dark energy enveloped the Demon Lord. Suddenly his hand twitched unnaturally, blackened veins spread. Examining himself briefly, he realized decay gnawed at his flesh, though his expression remained unwaveringly calm. The colossal eye's oppressive stare intensified. Instead of fear, a twisted grin formed, his resolve deepening. Crimson wings erupted from his back, energy crackling violently. Power surged uncontrollably, his presence towering, forcing even seasoned awakeners to tremble at sheer dominance. The colossal eye reacted fiercely, focusing its hatred, preparing an equally devastating surge of destruction. The Demon Lord charged downward, aura blazing, his sharpened glare piercing through chaos without hesitation. Insanity twisted his expression as he declared dominance, embracing madness fully to shatter his monstrous foe. With crimson wings spread wide, he soared forward, his body twisted mid-air, energy pulsing violently. Steel met resistance as his blade struck deep. The Demon Lord's chest tightened, pain erupting inside. Light exploded outward, golden flames engulfing the eye as cracks spread. His blade cut downward with relentless fury. Energy surged violently, cracks spreading outward. The monstrous eye writhed, explosions echoing. Observers gasped at his reckless assault, unable to comprehend the sheer madness driving his merciless strike. Others soon realized his intent, noting monsters stalled as his devastating blows focused solely on the eye. Soldiers debated reinforcements, realizing smaller units struggled to hold lines against endless swarms encroaching fast. Determination flared in one fighter's eyes as he prepared to strike. Swords clashed against monstrous hide, leaders shouted urgent commands, reminding allies their strength meant nothing unless attacks supported the Demon Lord. Rallying together, squads surged forward, blades flashing as they vowed to protect humanity's last fragile hope. Commanders ordered every squad to adapt quickly, ensuring movements matched the shifting tide of battle. Blades cleaving through monstrous ranks, while allies shouted warnings across shattered streets. Above, crimson wings carved arcs through the sky, unleashing relentless strikes upon the unyielding golden barrier. Despite countless blows, the shield pulsed stubbornly, refusing collapse even under overwhelming force and destructive power. A determined fighter invoked his technique, channeling winds into his blade before launching a devastating slash. One warrior unleashed a powerful strike. The impact cracked the barrier further, sparks scattering wildly. Shock spread among fighters as the monstrous eye pulsed ominously, radiating renewed strength despite visible damage. The Demon Lord's ally landed nearby, frustration clear, declaring their combined assault had accomplished nothing meaningful. Undeterred, another fighter lunged forward. Another warrior charged fearlessly. Dark purple lances of energy erupted suddenly, piercing downward with relentless precision. One combatant leapt upward, dodging lethal spears. The demon lord's wings stretched wide. Struggling soldiers scattered below. Violet energy ripped across the ground. One fighter steadied his blade, eyes narrowed with determination, ready to retaliate against overwhelming monstrous forces. Screams echoed as comrades fell, frontline warriors buckling under pressure, unable to hold their collapsing formation. Commanders demanded answers, furious at disarray. A soldier clutched his wound, collapsing to knees, crimson staining earth as his ally cried out. Veterans shouted urgent orders, reminding allies the beast's weakness lay only at its vulnerable neck. A lone fighter sprinted across ruined street nearby, crimson tendrils lashed violently, forcing others back as resistance surged. Another warrior launched upward, blade cloaked in violet energy. From below, comrades cried warnings, one voice desperate. The monstrous eye radiated dread, crimson energy spiraling outward as the battlefield trembled under crushing despair. One warrior muttered hopelessly, convinced victory was impossible against such overwhelming force and terrifying endless power. Another questioned desperately, wondering aloud if any possible method remained to bring down the monstrosity. Strategists admitted harsh truth: defeating the barrier required countless batteries, resources far beyond their means. The demon lord coldly revealed reality, declaring no true way existed to overcome the eye. Despite hopeless odds, one fighter resolved firmly to contribute, determined not to falter before overwhelming darkness. The demon lord acknowledged his resolve, wings spreading as they prepared together for another deadly assault. He reminded allies of his reputation, forged during countless battles fought deep within the demon realm. Suddenly reinforcements arrived, their cries of determination echoing loud. New squads formed ranks, magicians and swordsmen uniting. The monstrous eye writhed, crimson tendrils unfurling violently. The demon lord cursed inwardly, realizing the enemy's power escalated faster than their coordinated resistance. One warrior charged recklessly, striking upward, but shadows surged. Wings of crimson descended from above, the demon lord dropping rapidly. Desperate shouts rang out, voices urging comrades. Eyes widened in shock, a young warrior realized too late the danger closing rapidly around her. Before impact struck, crimson wings shielded her completely as the demon lord pulled her close. He scolded her harshly, reminding her survival depended on listening, not reckless defiance amidst chaos. Tears welled as she clung tightly, whispering regret while he carried her safely through collapsing ruins. He grimaced bitterly, thinking how fragile mortals remained. The demon lord's gaze hardened, crimson wings unfurled wide. With grim certainty, he whispered the truth: the ancient terror once sealed had finally returned. A pale hand emerged from shattered debris, dragging itself upward. She froze, eyes wide in disbelief, whispering fearfully, unable to comprehend the monstrous emergence. Energy swirled violently around him, flames of power gathering as his wings expanded, shaking the ground. His body pulsed with renewed strength, ancient magic coursing freely through his veins after long suppression. With a steady stance he raised his hand, declaring his regained mastery as enemies quivered nearby. Terrified survivors ran through the ruined streets. Blood sprayed as clawed horrors lunged forward. A lone warrior stood firm, slicing through swarming beasts. Above them a colossal eye opened, flooding the battlefield with malice. Monsters surrounded, but his body glowed with dark power. The sea split violently, jagged steel crashing downward. A colossal eye emerged, its gaze unblinking. Sharp claws scraped close, yet steady resolve held strong. Blood-red wings unfurled with force, flooding the ruined ground with dominance. Amid the chaos, a watchful presence smirked faintly. Dark tendrils lashed violently across the streets, dragging everything closer. Feral beasts swarmed from every direction. An outstretched hand reached through the chaos, pulsing energy flowing outward. Shadows closed in, crimson eyes gleaming, feathers scattered through the air, a monstrous eye widening. Energy surged from an extended hand, glowing fiercely as red wings flared wider with overwhelming force. Beasts lunged from all sides, yet the crimson wings stood unmoved. A confident smile emerged, while commands echoed within, narrowing every threat into one singular destined target. Power intensified, arcs of energy tearing the ground apart. The sky burned brighter than dawn, shadows recoiling instantly as the technique unleashed its blinding destructive eclipse. Blazing light engulfed the battlefield. The ground shattered beneath scorched footsteps. Creatures shrieked in terror, their bodies dissolving instantly. Radiant beams pierced the skyline, sweeping across towers. Horrified eyes widened, countless jaws unhinged. A monstrous roar split the air, shaking shattered buildings as chaos spread across the crumbling battlefield. The colossal eye glared downward, radiating fury, its presence warping reality with suffocating waves of raw malice. Energy gathered, crimson wings unfurled wider, emerald flames swirling violently around. Shadows stretched across broken streets as overwhelming pressure descended. The heavens darkened into a blazing eclipse. The battlefield shifted violently. A surge of violet energy erupted, hurling scattered bodies backward. Eyes widened in shock, voices trembled with disbelief, struggling to comprehend the overwhelming spectacle unfolding nearby. Confusion spread rapidly as names were shouted desperately, uncertainty tightening grips while panic filled trembling hearts. Realization struck distance warped unnaturally. The battleground relocated over 100 kilometers away within moments. Questions spread urgently as confusion deepened, desperate voices demanding clarity about the one left behind. Whispers grew uneasy, some insisting survival was impossible, while others clung desperately to fragile hope. Accusations rose sharply, voices clashing as uncertainty hardened into conflict beneath the fractured, tense silence. Blades shifted slightly, anger burning between allies, the threat of violence rising amidst growing distrust. Authority intervened with cold words, silencing disputes instantly, reminding them survival demanded unity above reckless division. Tension eased slightly, words softened, urging the group forward, despite lingering doubts haunting their thoughts. Speculation stirred uneasily, voices questioning the impossible survival they had glimpsed in fleeting final moments. Memories replayed the crimson wings, the overwhelming aura, the sense reality itself bent against reason. Whispers of forbidden magic spread quickly, raising unsettling fears of forces guiding events beyond comprehension. Hope clashed with dread as determination sparked, minds turning toward the possibility of returning back. Plans solidified quickly, helicopters arranged as their escape route from the devastation tearing the city apart. Requests poured anxiously, desperate voices seeking inclusion, clinging to safety amidst chaos none fully understood. A plea rang louder, shaking tense silence, desperation bowing low in hope for shared survival. Caution lingered heavily, doubts whispered, yet reason suggested strength in numbers outweighed risks of betrayal. Preparations began swiftly, shadows still looming, as unknown forces quietly watched the regrouping survivors from afar. The eclipse loomed above, its cosmic glow warping skies. Shrouded emerged quietly, their presence hidden, watching destruction with calculating patience from shadowed ruin. A whisper acknowledged failure, noting events spiraled beyond expectations, unsettling even the most disciplined observer. Plans adjusted quickly, discussions of dangerous powers, long forgotten, stirring once more within trembling reality. Orders passed swiftly, uncover intentions behind awakening, track the source, and prevent collapse at any cost. Conspirators whispered schemes, plotting new moves, their intentions hidden beneath cloaks and carefully guarded expression. A warning spread, eliminate threats before balance shattered, ensuring awakened forces remained tightly under control. Agreement followed swiftly, shadows dispersing to enact commands, weaving silent influence through fractured chaos below. Meanwhile, radiant energy streaked across the skies, burning a path that carved brilliance over mountains. Standing amidst destruction, power radiating, the crimson-winged raised a hand. The armored knight kneeled before the towering figure, lowering his head, acknowledging unwavering loyalty to the king. Slowly raising his gaze, the knight revealed glowing eyes beneath his helmet, awaiting commands with unshaken resolve. The king stood firm amidst ruins, scanning the desolate city, demanding knowledge about the missing subordinates. The knight confessed uncertainty, sensing only faint traces of power, admitting difficulty tracking others through distorted transfer. With calm authority, the king ordered the gate opened. The king stood over broken ground as swirling energy erupted. He stepped inside without hesitation, body engulfed in blinding radiance. The overwhelming light dispersed, revealing a grand hall adorned with towering pillars. Calmly seated upon the throne, the king reclaimed his rightful place.